Okay, I'll go ready to roll. I call to order this meeting of the USD 49 Board of Education for December 17th, 2018. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, motion's been approved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nope. Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. The board would like to hear any comments from the public. Hearing none, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the best of the best awards, the fun part of the meeting. Okay, we have 2 nominations and 2 winners. The first is the staff member award, best of the best, Tony Lormeyer, nominated by Luke O'Borney. Luke, would you like to say a couple words?
I'm actually going to come out there. Just
okay. Good.
All right. For those of you that don't know or listening from home, again, my name is Luke O'Borney. I'm a school board member. I nominated Tony for many reasons, but first I want to get a little bit of background, kind of tell you, who she is and what she does. And I did tell her any of the stuff that I say is inaccurate. She's going to kind of hit me and correct me. So.
All right, sounds good.
But she is a library secretary for both Laughlin and actually Wilson that I learned tonight as well. And some of the stuff that she does on a daily basis, kind of help check in and check out books, cataloging and processing new books, shelving of books that have been returned, displays for the library, maintaining and updating records for all the patrons, whether that's students or staff, really helps a lot with the Laughlin Book Fair. Some of the stuff that really has kind of added to the workload over the years is she now kind of supervises on her own, basically over 20 classes, and this is again between Wilson and Laughlin. As you guys all probably know as well, my wife is the librarian at Laughlin, and her exact quote was, "I can't do my job without her knowledge, organization, and help." So, as amazing as all that is, that's actually just the background. That's just kind of telling you a little bit about Tony. Why I nominated her is something entirely different. This summer, in the summer, she also works here at the Rockwell Copy Center, and so she has extensive knowledge with the workings, the inner things, and everything else. As you guys know, last summer we made a change on our copier purchase, and who better to see this than someone who actually works on this stuff on a daily basis. And she noticed something that was a little different than what we had done in the past. We had approved the Sumner 1 bid, and it was much cheaper, which was tremendously great. But she did notice that we started to pay for staples out of the copy center. And we started looking at things, and it looked like, well, that's the way the contract was written, And at the end of the day, was that a huge cost to us? I think the first month we looked at was like $145. If you kind of tried to add that up, you come up to somewhere between $1,740 and $2,000 a year. But she brought this to my attention. She said, "Hey, I'm kind of seeing this. This is different than the old." And she asked some questions. I was like, "Well, those are really good questions. I don't really have an answer." So at that point in time, I sent some of these questions on to Tracy. And Tracy looked at the contract and reviewed things, and Tracy's like, "Well, even I'm a little confused, because in one part here it says you're responsible to pay for those staples, but in a whole other part it says we'll cover everything. So what did that mean?" Well, we sent it on to our sales rep, and the sales rep's like, "No, I think that's got to be separate, but I'm going to send it on up the chain." Well, I think it finally ended up with the CEO or whatever of that particular company, and he came back with, it's all free. It's all going to be included. So that was a tremendous savings for us. We're looking at roughly $2,000 a year. When we're looking at budget and crisis and everything else, we have so many employees. If we could get an extra little squeeze out of everything, and more importantly, what I look at here is that true example of the best. I told you everything that she is and everything that she does, but when she sees this on a day in, day out, she could have done nothing with this information. She could have just complained about the situation, said, "Well, that stupid school board member Luke, I'm like, I can't believe he would vote for that again without knowing all the facts." She could have done numerous things, but she took a positive action. She researched it. I mean, she had detailed notes showing exactly what I should look at and what I should look, this. She showed me what needed to be discovered, what had been looked into. And really, I look at this as a case of her persistence and her strive for excellence just added to a big savings for our district. And that attitude and that concern for our organization is really why I nominated Tony as the best of the best, and why I'm honored to be the first to congratulate her.
All right. Certificate for you. $50 gift card. Congratulations. Alrighty, before we get to our second nomination, the student nomination, I want to highlight that. I want to thank Gella's, Tiger Burgers, Handymen for Hire for sponsoring the Best of the Best awards. So thank you to them. The next winner is Ellie Bullock from Roosevelt. I believe she was nominated by Jan Burkholder, who was here. All right, very good.
I'm Jan Burkholder. I'm second grade teacher at Roosevelt School, and this is one of the students that I have this year in my classroom. This is Ellie Bullock, and I thought the best way to explain why she has touched me as the best of the best this year is to simply read the nomination that I wrote. Many times our society selects individuals to receive awards based on what is visible or brightly proclaimed through different social media. While many of those individuals are very deserving of the recognition, I've chosen a young leader, innocent, a quiet student, to be recognized for the caring assistance that she shows each day to one of our Roosevelt star students. Without needing or ever getting any instruction from me, her teacher, without waiting for an earned award, without expecting any recognition for being there, this student, Ellie, has initiated on her own to touch the life of another. Ellie gently leads her star classmate to any place the student needs to go. Without needing to be in line herself, first in line, she holds back and she makes sure that her buddy has the necessary supplies, zips up a coat to face that wintry outdoors, or simply lends a gentle hand to walk to our next location. Most of the time, a loving arm is wrapped around the shoulder of her friend as they walk side by side down the hallway. During a quiet reading time, Ellie's lap becomes the cozy spot where her classmate wants to sit. And just as a side note that wasn't in my nomination, today that cozy lap became a place for the star student to actually fall asleep in her lap. Ellie gives of her time, she gives of her energy and her love to show kindness and compassion to her star companion and friend. She leads by example, always calm, caring, kind, and willing to think of others before herself. Does Ellie excel academically in school? She absolutely does. Does Ellie have a large supportive group of other friends? Yes. But if I were to ask Ellie why she looks forward to each day, it wouldn't be those two accomplishments. I know she looks forward to being there for her star student. That's where she places her heart and her devotion. Ellie is a leader of tomorrow. We, the parents, the school, and the community are raising a generation of generous hearts for giving to others. Ellie, as your teacher, I'm very proud of you. Please continue to be the best of the best.
right, the next item on the agenda is communication from other organizations. John, do you want to cover these?
The report for the Recreation Commission, there's nothing really to share on that, but we do have representatives to talk or present the USD 489 Foundation project, that check presentation.
Okay. Please come forward.
That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
My name is Curtis Brown. I'm the president of the USD 489 Foundation for Educational Excellence. And on November 3rd this year, we held our first annual dinner and auction. And through some hard work of our board and volunteers, we were able to raise $38,685.20 to go towards the secure and safe entrances at all the buildings within the district. And so it's my honor on behalf of the board to present the school board here with a check in that amount.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Do a photograph or something, or how do you want to? Okay.
Yeah, you accept all of it there. That's appropriate.
Silly. Do you want all of us? Why aren't we all standing?
Thanks, Curtis.
Well, I want to thank the foundation once again for the hard work they did on the, and board, some of the board members really pitched into. I said before I really did not, so I was there. That's all I did. All right, now we'll move to school spotlights. I think, John, you'll have this one.
Yeah, there are a few I'd like to share. We ended up having the Laughlin Elementary School was named National ESEA Distinguished School by the ESEA State Program Administrators. They could qualify with 3 different categories. The one that they ended up falling into was the exceptional student performance for 2 consecutive years. In this particular case, just an awareness so people have a better understanding, there were only 100 schools in the nation who ended up receiving that, and 2 in Kansas. So it really was quite an honor to end up receiving that, and it was based upon, again, performance, how much was gained over one year to another year. So really impressed by that. Also like to share that Christy O'Borney, a Laughlin Elementary School 4th grade teacher and media specialist, recently earned her national board certification this December. She becoming a national board certified teacher is an extensive process that requires countless hours of preparation. The district currently has 4 national board certified teachers, including Christy O'Borney, Monica Dreiling, Amy Wassinger, and Kathy Wagner. So very proud of her in attaining that particular certification. The 2017-2018 Hayes High School Guidon newspaper was named an All-American publication by National Scholastic Press Association. High school publications are judged in 4 main areas: coverage and content, text, visuals, and presentation. The Guidon received marks of distinction in all 4 of those categories. Publications can receive a total of 500 points when scored, and Guidon earned 497, so they missed 3 points out of the thing. Guidon submitted 6 of their publications for judging. Student Lacey Gregory was the editor-in-chief of last year's publication, and the students are taught by Bill Gasper. And Bill has done just a magnificent job at the high school working with the students in that area. We have another activity that occurred recently at Lincoln. Monica Dreiling's class at Lincoln Elementary, they participated in a class project to help them learn about marketing and community service. She was able to purchase a lot of Beanie Babies. I mean, in the end, it was 1,440 Beanie Babies she was able to acquire. And they went through the money. They did the numbers there of trying to try to do a fundraiser, gain money there. The Beanie Babies were sold for $0.25 a piece, and the small ones were that quarter. The larger ones was $1. And then they were going to use the proceeds to benefit Cancer Society of Ellis County, Humane Society, First Call for Help, Hayes Public Library, and then also the pantries. The students are going to sell ads to maximize their purchases to benefit the Community Assistance Center. So it was really a wonderful job. They were extremely surprised at the amount of money they were able to come up with, and sounds like it was a fantastic activity. Also like to end up identifying the master teacher nominees. We end up having overall winner for the USD 489 Master Teacher of the Year is Laura Gowan. Laura is a reading teacher at Laughlin Elementary School. This year's master teacher nominees were Lincoln Elementary, De'Ara Lesage, Laughlin Elementary, Laura Gowan, Roosevelt Elementary, Misty Lohmeyer, Wilson Elementary, Candace Sage, Hayes Middle, Karen Nowak and Julie Zollinger, Hayes High, Sue Ellen Stinger, and Head Start was Christine Weber. Also, congratulations to Laughlin Elementary School PTA. They earned a grant from Heartland Community Foundation for $10,000. They intend on using that towards purchasing playground equipment for the school. They've been raising funds over the past several years to purchase new equipment. The USD 49 wishes to extend sincere thanks to the Heartland Community Foundation for its continued support of education and wellness for Hayes Public Schools. Our spelling bee winner at Roosevelt Elementary, we have the participants here. First place was a third grader, Dakota Meyer. Second place, third grader, Ella Pfeiffer. Third place,
Pardon me, I think
they
I
missed
that one.
someone. Don't have enough names. Fifth grader was Cameron Daniels, who ended up getting third place. Okay, that's what it. And fourth place alternate, fifth grader, was Olivia Getz. The top three placers will compete at Ellis County Spelling Bee in January, and good luck to all these young ladies. Roosevelt Elementary yearbook, which I find very satisfying to see that the high school does so well with its journalism and with their yearbook, and then at the elementary we're seeing that they're being honored as well. Roosevelt Elementary yearbook received honorable mention towards the 2018 Life Touch Yearbooks Showcase Contest. This is the second consecutive year the school has received an honorable mention award. Publications are sorted into 4 different divisions. You have the high school, has a couple divisions, the middle school, and then there's the elementary school. Yearbook was evaluated on the following criteria: theme and theme development, design, continuity, photography, writing, creativity, content, and coverage. The books reflect hours of hard work by the staffs and advisors. Laura Schaub, Life Touch yearbook education specialist and contest coordinator, said, "These books are some of the best elementary and secondary books in the nation." Kevin Daniels put together the Roosevelt yearbook, and 5th grade students come up with the theme and compete to draw the cover. Last year's cover winner was Bailey Stanley. The 2017 cover was created by Lakin Zimmerman.
Cameron Daniels was the third place winner.
Did I? Yes, Cameron Daniels was the third place, but it was a 5th grader in that third place. Thank you for catching that.
Very good. I'm happy to see kids doing so well at Spelling Bee. I have to admit I was a Spelling Bee kid myself, but I only thought I had to learn one word. B. All right. Okay, moving on to this report from the superintendent.
I do not have one this evening.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the financial report.
I do not have any points of reference unless there was questions.
Any
and none
comments or
came
questions
earlier
from-
with them. So.
I don't think we had any.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda Includes the following: board meeting minutes from November 16th, 2018. Approval of bills in the amount of $2,837,379.76. Personnel transactions, financial reports, including the clerk's report and the investment report, and the approval of surplus items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the change of, instead of 76 cents, 67 cents.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second with that addition made? Do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Nope, I think Luke beat you out there. Okay, having a motion and a second. Open the floor to any discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Can I end up pointing out one item?
Yes, please.
In the consent agenda, there is a point of reference that I'd like to make sure everybody is aware of. Bill Gasper, who I spoke of just beforehand,
Yes.
his retirement is identified, and with the number of years that he has served us, and they have been so very successful at the high school. Again and again, it's really amazing that you can have that kind of success in such a competitive area in both 5A and 4A. I mean, he ended up, it didn't matter which classification, we still were extremely successful in that. We will miss Bill very much and appreciate what he was able to do for our community.
Very good, thanks, John. I was in a hurry to get through things, and I'm glad you brought that up. All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, okay, it's been approved by 6-0. All right, moving on to new business. We have 3 items under new business. First is the 2017-2018 Audit Report. Melissa Romy from Adams, Brown, Barron, and Ball will present her findings.
Yes, and is it all right if you sit down here at the table, or will that?
Nope,
Thank you.
perfectly fine.
This evening I have James Marcichek with me. He's a staff accountant, and he has done quite a bit of work on the audit report, and just as he had done last year, he's going to go over the first statement with you on page 4.
Okay.
You can open up your binder to page 4. Page 4 is our summary of just the receipts, the expenditures, and unencumbered cash, just by fund. It gives you a layout of just the total receipts, the total expenditures, and kind of any encumbrances that come up. Just to highlight some of the few funds that we'll go over. The first fund that we'll look at is the general fund. As you can see, at the end of the school year, our unencumbered cash balance was fully expended to 0. That's required by the state to spend down to 0, and that matches up with our budget authority as well. The full budget authority was spent as well. The next fund is our supplemental general fund. This isn't required to be spent down to 0, but you are required to spend your full budget authority, and you'll see that on a few pages later. But the remaining balance in the supplemental general is $439,627. One of the next major funds that we'll look at is our capital outlay. It's a few lines down there, about 6 lines down. And at the beginning of the year, we had $3,123,864, and at the end of the year, there was $2,703,974 remaining in that. And one of the last funds that we'll look at on this page would be the contingency reserve fund. At the beginning of the year, we had $661,829, and during the year, we transferred another $300,000 into that fund. And at the end of the year, we'll have $961,829. If you flip over to the next page, it'll kind of give you the total recap for the school district for the year. We started off the year with $7,234,994, and at the end of the year, we had $6,790,888. If there's no questions on those 2 pages, I'll have you turn back to page 14. Page 14 will give us a breakdown of the capital leases that the school board or the school district has in effect as of the end of the year. As of the end of the year, there is still $1,358,743 outstanding. They're repaid down to that. And by 2022, if you look at the schedule just right below that, that's by 2022 is when all of those leases will be paid off. And then I'll have you go a few more pages back to page 19. And this, as I was discussing earlier, is the comparison from our certified budget to the actual expenditures for the school district for the year. As you can see, the first 2 funds, the general fund and the supplemental general fund, all of our budget authority was expended. And you can see with the rest of the funds, if you look at the right-hand column, there was no over expenditures per the certified budget, so we do not have any budget violations with this year's audit.
Nor did we have any unencumbered cash violations. And so again, I know as we looked at previous statements, when you have federal funds, your federal funds can go negative because you're on a reimbursement basis. And so that's how you've operated your grants, that's the proper way to do it. So you may see some of those, but that's not a budget violation as long as it's due to a federal fund going negative in that balance.
Right.
We have looked at the bulk of the audit report just to tell you, when you looked at your financial statements on a month-to-month basis, if you looked at your unencumbered cash balance, and you looked at your receipts and your disbursements, basically that is exactly what is reflected here in this report. So there was not many modifications made to it at all. Okay? I do want to go back though to page 65. And this right here is, you have actually what I would call 3 reports within 1 report. You have what we call Generally Accepted Auditing Standards report. That's just a basic audit report. But then we go ahead and we compile another report within it due to government auditing standards. And that requires us to look at your financial statements. We look at internal controls on the financial statements along with compliance on the financial statements. And those 2 operate together. Then for the 3rd level, or the 3rd type of audit that we do perform, is what we call uniform guidance. I also call it the single audit because it describes it a little bit better. In the single audit though, then what we look at is we look at internal control on that major program or programs that were selected to be audited. And we also look at the compliance part of it in conjunction with that. And so the federal government does require that this be submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse. And so anything that's within this report, it actually goes up to the Federal Clearinghouse. If they had any issues, then they would get a hold of you. Which, at this point, they wouldn't because we described them within the report. On page 65, we take a look at the type of financial statements that you have. You have what we call regulatory financial statements. So you have an unmodified report, meaning that it's not in conformity with something called General Accepted Accounting Principles. That means that your audit report is not done on the accrual basis of accounting for a for-profit business. We do it, you do it underneath what Kansas has as regulatory basis, meaning your cash receipts or the cash that's collected by the end of the year, and your expenditures equals your disbursements plus your accounts payable plus anything you as a board have encumbered. Meaning that you've ordered it and maybe it didn't come in yet, or you've set aside funding because you have an obligation to expend it, but you just couldn't get it done before the end of the year. And so that's an encumbrance. So when we look at it, internal control over financial reporting, that's that piece that's on your financial statements alone. We did note that you did not have a material weakness, but you did have a significant deficiency that's identified that we're going to talk about in just a moment. You had no non-compliance. And again, non-compliance, we look at items that the state would require for you to do underneath your Kansas statutes. And those are not all comprehensive. There are a lot of them. So there are certain ones that we look at each year on a rotating basis. Underneath the federal awards then, We took a look at internal control over your major programs. We had nothing identified. There was no material weaknesses nor significant deficiencies. And looking at it, we do have to, there are no audit findings required, an unmodified report on compliance. You actually have just two major programs, and one of them is the Head Start. The second one is called the Child Nutrition Cluster, and so that's your school lunch program, your school breakfast program, and then the summer school program. And that's audited all in one cluster as required by the federal government. We look at Type A and Type B programs, and again, that's identified through the uniform guidance, and those are any expenditures that you have of $750,000. Those are what's called the Type A program. Anything less than that is called the Type B program. And then you did not qualify as a low-risk auditee because you prepare your financial statements on a regulatory basis of accounting, which in the state of Kansas, most municipalities do this. So it means we have to look at 40% versus just 20% of your overall federal expenditures, so you actually get more coverage. I'm going to have you flip to the next page. And this right here, underneath the financial statement findings, we look at internal controls. And in the past couple of years, you guys have added a couple of departments, and so one of them was when you took a look at what the human resource reports were, as employees are hired, added vacation, sick leave, and that, those items are not getting communicated over to the payroll department. And so that's a significant deficiency because something could happen that wouldn't be caught in a timely manner. And so again, had visited with management, and so they're going to work on something because again, employees that are not being removed from the payroll because either the department didn't get it up to the HR department, HR couldn't get it over to payroll, and so we did note that. At the end of the day, we recommend that the district department heads need to contact the human resources as soon as they become aware of any change in employment, and then they need a method in order to review that and then notify the payroll department along with the accounting department and that there has been a change or there's been some type of compensation used such as vacation or sick leave. Are there any questions?
Very good.
If not, I'm going to have you flip over to the next page. Last year, we did have a finding in the federal program. It wasn't the Head Start program. And this is where somebody was getting paid and there was a small amount of payroll that was charged to the federal program. It was very small, but unfortunately that was not within compliance. And so we followed up on that this year, and that item has been taken care of and resolved. And so that's basically what this page says, is that it was clear. If you flip over to page 68, the school district actually expended for your fiscal year June 30th of 2018 $4,943,831 federal awards that you had received, you were able to expend. And so that's very comparable to what it has been in the past. And so you didn't see any significant decreases.
Okay.
If there are not any questions on this audit report, then I'm going to flip you back to one loose leaf letter that was at the front of the audit report, and it's the governance letter. The governance letter does require that we go through and just identify a few things that we would have talked to management about. It does not mean that they are not significant, they are not material, but they are items that were discussed with management. We did not have any significant audit findings that we needed to note in this letter. The financial statements were neutral, consistent, and clear. We did not encounter any difficulties. We have attached a couple of journal entries that we went over with the school district, that's the management that they were going to make at the back of this letter. We did not have any disagreements with management. They did provide all information we needed within a very timely manner, within a day or two, which again is important because if you can provide me the information within a very timely period, it means that you probably did it, you know where to find it at, and that's a good sign. Then just down underneath audit recommendations, we did notice when we were looking at your report, there's a report that we look at, we call a board revenue, board expense report. Those have what your budgeted numbers are on the left column and then what you've spent to date. The budgeted numbers were not updated, and because they're not updated, then if I was looking at that report as a board member, I wouldn't be able to tell what we really had truly expended. I know they used some other reports to give to you as a board because we did look through the board packet. But again, items coming out of the software, we feel that they should reflect the accurate budget that you're operating under, just in case it would help to catch an error if there was ever an error in the spreadsheets that they were using. Or if you as a board member went in and pulled a report and looked at it, you would want it to be accurate.
Very good.
Can you repeat what that concern or issue was again?
You guys have software reports that are in and out of your accounting system. And in the accounting system, you track your budgeted revenue and your budgeted expenditures. Well, we're more concerned about what your budgeted expenditure number is, what's been approved in that report compared to what your actual expenses are. And so we want the budgeted number to match back to the certified budget of what you can spend that was published and approved. So you can see how much then your actual expenditures are and where you're at.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? If not, at some point, if you would please approve the audit report so we'd be able to submit it to the Federal Clearinghouse and also to the Kansas Department of Education, we would appreciate that. That way we know it's okay to go ahead and send it.
Very good. Thank you.
We do want to thank everybody for their cooperation and their help. They were very helpful when we were here, and so thank you, John.
Yeah.
Melissa, what is the date that this is due?
30 days after the audit date, so it needs to be submitted by January 17th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So John, do we need a motion to accept this? I'm not suggesting right now, but do we need it on the next meeting?
We will.
Okay. All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda for new business is the 2018-2019 Hayes High School Curriculum Guide Revision. Marty, you're up.
Thank you. Thanks for this time. We'll try to make this brief. The JAG course, if we just go through, we've just submitted the changes and adjustments that we are proposing for our 2019-2020 school year. We've developed a write-up for the JAG-K course that Johnny Matlock is heading. You see that. Our physical education, our strength and conditioning program has really undergone tremendous changes this year, and it's very, very exciting to see what's going on there. The real focus is on strength, power, and speed, not necessarily bodybuilding. They do have a Flex Friday picture once in a while. If you watch Tony Crow on Twitter, that's the only day they're allowed to flex in the room. So strength, power, and speed is very, very important for the competitiveness of our student athletes. In family consumer science, we really have, in Career Connections, we feel in our discussion with that department, it felt like we've been limiting our students in what career opportunities they're really interested in, and we feel like we can expand that into the healthcare, education, restaurant, and hospitality industry as well. We've really been focusing primarily with sending kids down to the preschool, which is in our building. We feel like we can do a lot more partnerships in the community, and that will be our goal this next year. Family studies will bring in students, future Hayes High students, not just preschool age, but birth to preschool as well. And it's really a great, great experience for our kids. And you want to talk about a fulfilling observation in the Commons area in the morning when we have kids here. There's a number of our juniors and seniors coming in with these little kids like Miss Burkholder was standing here with the hand in her hand. And the kids are just so careful and so caring with those little kids, and these guys that make many of us look small are squatting down trying to talk and give high fives to these kids. But that's another topic for another day. Under the leadership of Mr. Underwood, concert choir will become an audition choir, and freshmen will not be enrolled in that. Chorale will become the freshman choir. Foreign language, we did start the Seal of Biliteracy last year. Was our first year. It was kind of our pilot year to kick off to really establish and assess how our students in year 3 and or 4 of an advanced language, whether it be German or Spanish, how they would compare, and we really did quite well. So we're going to continue the Seal of Biliteracy, and we will put that seal on their transcript when they leave. We did add some benefits. The world is getting smaller, and we know that it's important for us to continue to encourage and give kids reasons, good reasons, relevant reasons to take more than one language, and that is English in our school. We'll continue to offer Latin through a blended method of face-to-face and edgenuity. German will be face-to-face, as will Spanish. We'll offer 4 levels of Spanish, 2 levels of German, 3 levels of German, and 2 levels of Latin. We did start a Foreign Language Honor Society. It's a national organization, and we had our first induction perhaps 6 weeks ago in the library. It was a very, very nice event. No major changes in tech ed. We have been using the CNC machine and doing some coding in there, and yeah, we look forward to we're working on a grant with Mr. Howard right now as we speak to try to do some more of those things. I would also tell you that Kurt Viner was awarded a grant recently with regard to the use of drones in the area of ag science and manufacturing, and so we'll talk about that at some other time as well. The Learning Center, we had always listed all of their courses, and that is such a fluid list of courses all the time. And when we met with Carrie Peterson and Ms. Hickert, we really felt, and it was really, they're saying, it changes every day. Perhaps we should just put a link to those courses rather than list them all, and we will. We will list those that we use most often with our Hayes High students in our recovery courses or acceleration courses. Science, chemistry honors will be required to have some work done in the summer in advance of the honors chemistry class. In business, a Carl Perkins grant required that we change the name of project management. When you come to Hayes High School and see all the productions and the posters that personalize our school, that project class will be called digital media project management instead. Entrepreneurship, we really feel like we shouldn't be waiting for junior and senior years to have kids consider themselves to be considered entrepreneurs, so we are opening that up to 9th and 10th grade as well. The counselors and I went over and met with the staff at North Central Kansas. It was really one of the most beneficial meetings we've had in my years here with NCK, because it really let us talk face-to-face about how things operate in the different systems. It really led to some good ideas with regard to some of our kids. If they don't get into auto mechanics, for example, at the beginning of their junior year, and they start their senior year, it will actually leave them with a dead semester, if you will, their second year at NCK. Whereas if we, and this is a topic that I'll have with Dennis King from Fort Hays State University, if we can come to an agreement where some general eds that will be offered on campus while those kids are over there for these courses, if those kids could actually take them at NCK, they could expedite their degree or their certification a semester earlier and save a ton of money. So we hope that we're able to work that out, and I will meet with Dennis King January 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. We're still chasing down a date. Art. The biggest change here is really to give kids an advanced exploration art class. If we don't have enrollment for it, we won't have it. Just with any class, But with the addition of our new kiln here in the next month or so, we feel that there's a good opportunity to do some more forging, which Mr. Mader is very, very familiar with after taking many of the advanced classes at Fort Hays State University. You know, it's amazing when kids come to our school and from other places. You know, we had over 65 new students enroll in our school district this last fall. And they didn't come because of sports. They came because of the course offerings we have. I'm not saying they can't come because of sports, but they come because of our academics. They come because we have rigor, we have relevance, we have strong teachers, and really we have a climate that really treats people in decent ways. We had 17 students from out of state, and as many as 12 from other schools in the areas. So I thank you for letting us offer the things we do. We always want to do more. We talked the other day with Shanna and John about staffing, and if we could, what would we do, and just kind of think out of the box a little bit to offer more programs for our kids. Do you have any questions for me?
I do have one on my literacy piece. I think it's great to try to recognize that with the kids. Does that include those that may take their courses online, because we don't often like French and Japanese?
We would do that, Paul, but right now, to my knowledge, I don't think we have kids that are doing that during the school year with us.
Not now.
Gifted?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, I know of one who did French, and I know of another who did Japanese.
A couple years ago.
Yeah, they're my kids, so that's why.
That's how you know.
They're done, they're gone. But
Come back, I'll give them a certificate. They have to test, though. They have to test.
Test, right.
well, that's gonna.
We just started that last year, but yeah, I would assume that there's a test for that also.
Yeah.
Right now, the only ones that we've done is Spanish
Right.
because of the level 3-4.
Right. And I know of some that we did have, well, for those that didn't have the language they particularly understand, they take those. But something to consider.
Yes, sir.
Not that there are many, but there
Yep.
might be.
Why not?
All right.
Thank you all.
Any more questions? All right. Thanks.
Thank you. I do want to give a shout out to Bill Gasper.
Yes.
Just has been very good quality for our kids. Cool that we could hire a guy that owned a newspaper and let the kids experience it from that point of view. And we've got Christmas concerts, so I'm going to get over there. You're going to miss out on me reading poetry. I've never read poetry before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item, Mike, I really neglected. Really, it is appropriate to recognize Keith Hall if he'd stand up. Keith is going to be our new executive director for finance and for human resources, and so Keith will be sitting up here with us on January 14th. He'll be starting January 2nd.
All right.
John, if I might, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you recommending me for this position and you guys approving it. And the things I've seen here tonight are really exciting. The curriculum that he went through, and you start out the meeting with a national award recognizing these guys for great work and a $38,000 check. How could you go wrong? So I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you, Keith. Thank you. All right, the next item of new business is the sale of the Washington property.
Yeah, I'm excited to end up having a representative here from the Overland Property Group and Galen Romy. I don't know if Galen's going to stand up or not, but they're here to end up sharing some information to the board at this time.
Is there somewhere where I can plug the computer in for the presentation?
It's on Keynote. Hopefully it plugs right in. It should. There we go. Look at that. Technology works. Isn't that exciting?
That's very good, yes.
Yeah, I do. Should be pretty easy, I hope. Good evening. My name is Matt Gillum. I'm Vice President of Development and one of the partners for Overland Property Group. Some of you may be
be aware of some of our properties around the Midwest. Myself and the 3 other partners are all from Salina, so we're close by, even though we have kind of a national reach nowadays. So this is kind of the little company that we built over the last 17 years. All of us, again, started off in Salina. The property here we have in Hayes is one of our first properties, and since then we've developed around 60 communities in the United States, 3,000 units, about a little north of $500 million in the last 17 years. So we can go to the next slide. Just kind of giving you a quick rundown of how all this started. If you look right there in 2008, a little $2 million deal, that was phase 2 of Stone Post, the only deal we did that year. So like everybody else, we felt the recession, but after that happened, we really came out a lot stronger, and it branched off into not just affordable housing, but also luxury. Oh, you're all right. You can hit the next one. It likes to spin around and do all that kind of stuff. So as it's shown up there, the financial partnerships, we've had everyone from JP Morgan Chase on down to American Express invest in us. So here in town, Wells Fargo is one of the investors and partners on that community, and we have some local lending institutions that have also put money into that. So as I said, we've gotten into luxury living as well. So this is a subdivision in Salina with some pretty expensive homes on there, and then the next slide that you'll see is a new concept for us called a boutique retirement club. This one's in Leawood, Kansas, suburb of Kansas City. My office is actually in the parking lot of this. But we are developing these across the United States. These are very, very high-end senior living communities, kind of a new niche product like living at the Ritz-Carlton. But where we really started off, and the product we have here in Hayes, is we started off in affordable housing, and we took affordable housing, we took that approach in a different regard than other people did. We wanted it to look like it wasn't affordable housing. We wanted it to act like it wasn't affordable housing, with not just the quality of the structures, but also with the programming and the things that we'd offer. So these don't look like affordable housing communities. This is Steamboat Springs, Colorado, where I was actually just at yesterday. This is our first community there. Again, doesn't look like affordable housing. This is the first of about 3 communities that we're developing in Steamboat. This is a community just outside of Lubbock. It's a $250,000 pool. That's 108 units, and this is affordable and market rate housing down there, and this is inside the clubhouse. So I show these images because I like people to kind of broaden their horizons on what they consider affordable housing. So for our little shop, we were somehow ranked the 26th largest developer in the country for affordable. And we think that's pretty impressive because the size of our staff is roughly 10% of what these other big boys on this list are. And we've been able to do that with the relationships that we have. You know, growing up in Salina in western Kansas, you grow up knowing that you're dealing with people. And so the most important thing in an interaction is dealing with one another. And the contract is a secondary feature of that. If you're going to a contract, it means the relationship is over and everybody's already lost. So one of the reasons we've been able to get to this place is simply because of our relationships and the things that we've built. So as we've done kind of the 60 communities up there, we've also gotten to historic renovation, which kind of plays an important part to what I'm going to talk to you here about tonight. So our first historic rehab was one that I think I didn't sleep for 9 months on. The historic Tabor Grand Hotel, which is just south of Vail in Leadville, Colorado. One of the most, I would say, famous structures west of the Mississippi. This was Doc Holliday's hangout. A lot of famous people stay there. This little box you can see on the left-hand side of the screen is the Baby Doe box. So Baby Doe Tabor, the Matchless Mine, and the Unsinkable Molly Brown also were very synonymous with this hotel. So we can go to the next couple slides. This is what it looked like after it was renovated, which looks really nice. At one point the city thought about scraping it to turn it into a parking lot because it was in such disrepair. We turned it into 37 affordable housing units. The city's very proud of it today, and we're very proud of. This is the Lee Hardware buildings in Salina, so some of you guys may recognize this. We just undertook this project earlier this year. We're getting ready to start construction. We're going through all of the historic kind of procedures and processes right now. it's a pretty large undertaking. That building, or the 3 buildings, is roughly 200,000 square feet. We're taking this first building on the left first. It's 50 or 64,000 square feet, and it'll be 53 apartment units that are also low income in nature. This little courtyard in the center is going to have some restaurants and things of that nature. So it's an exciting project for downtown Salina, and the city was very generous in actually contributing funds to this because they had such a vested interest in making sure this project went well. One other thing that's been kind of unique, we can go to the next. This is the old Hawthorne School in Salina. Doesn't look like a school because it's not, but the building itself did not really give us much to work with. We couldn't make the finances work inside of that structure. So we actually did take the school down and demolish it, but as you can see there, we kept the front of the school and used it on the clubhouse. All the brick is reused brick from the school. So while we weren't able to make that structure work, and about 5 other businesses had tried and failed in that structure, the city had came to us and said, we don't want this building to sit empty. The school board had sold it a few years earlier, and it just, because of its structure, it just didn't really lend itself to working. So we came in and said, yeah, we are going to take the structure down, we have to, but we're going to preserve kind of the things that people are used to seeing. So there, you can't see it here, but there's a plaque there kind of dedicating the bricks and the building itself to the old, the former students. And it's always interesting when things like this happen because people have mental attachments to things, and we kind of let the community walk through the building before we tore it down. And the community, I think, had some uncertainties about it, but after the apartments were built and the community really formed in 48 apartment units, everyone in the neighborhood is very excited that it's kind of a rejuvenation of a site that had some trouble staying occupied and making work as a business. So brings us around to what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, but kind of to first start, just wanted to make sure everybody in the room knew these are our apartments. We currently have, if you go to the next slide, I've kind of outlined them here. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but in the middle, that's the first phase, which is a clubhouse and 2 apartment buildings, which each apartment building is 16 units there, so that's 32 units. Phase 2, which was the old drive-in that we tore down, is another 16 units. And then phase 3, we had to get a little bit creative on the design, and that is 15 units. So all in total, we have 63 apartment units there. We are full. We have a large waiting list. So we're very interested, and as Galen will tell you all, it's a constant yearly communication where, okay, Galen, what do we have for land around the area? We would like to build more apartments. The state would like to see more apartments built here. And we've had struggles. We are really excited about this product because we think we've been able to really clean the neighborhood up and have a very nice presence in the community in that area. And we work very closely with the leaders in this community. So your city manager and I communicate very frequently, and we believe and we hope that we've been good partners in the community. And I think because of their continued acceptance of us back in town to look for more development opportunities, we have been. But as you can see, that the school building itself kind of lends itself perfectly to our footprint and potential expansion. I can't stand here and promise you that if we were to come up with a deal together that I wouldn't tear the school down. I can't take that off the table at this point in time because I would need to do my due diligence to make sure that I can, no matter what I do, I'm going to be successful at. And so the 60 communities we've developed, we've never had a single one fall into financial trouble. We've never had any investors not make the returns that they were promised, whether that be on the affordable side or the other. We've also never sold a single community, which is something that is almost the rarest thing in development. Developers are kind of turn and burn organizations nowadays by trade. We are not. We have never sold a single community. That's why I can stand up here today and tell you I'm looking to make another investment into Hayes, and it's for the long term. So this community, again, that expansion is something we're interested in, and it's something we would really like to explore with you guys. My first target would be to save the school and to make that school work and to convert it to apartments. The state, I have had communications with them about this area, and they are very interested. So the funding mechanism I've used on all of these first buildings is exactly what I would look to do in this. I would potentially also go after some federal historic credits if I'm able to save the school. So there's things playing in the favor there for me to save the school, and if at all possible, I would. If not, it would be something where we would have to explore the site itself and if that's possible. But if we were to be able to come to an agreement on selling the school to me in an option contract, which would allow me to pursue this funding mechanism, we would go after it as a historic deal. And if the state rejected it from that level, or I couldn't make it work from that level, I would then have to come back to you and say, I was not able to work it as a historic deal, the state didn't like it for whatever reason, or the historical individuals didn't like it, so now I need to pursue it as a tear down. But I think timing is probably something that's really important to you guys just as much as everything else I've just currently told you. So my timing is these federal funds, which are low-income housing tax credits, which is what I use on all the first buildings. I can apply for those through the state of Kansas, through Kansas Housing Resources Corporation in February. I put the application in and I hear back on whether I'm successful or not in May. The Lee buildings in Salina that you saw were ones that got funded last year. So I hear back in May, and then it takes me a little while to work my historical approvals, my banking, my investor approvals, and I would be looking to close on the school and start construction end of calendar year to first quarter. The Lee buildings in Salina has some pretty significant challenges to work through because of some environmental clearance items, some of the types of funds. So we'll be closing on that building and starting with it probably first to second week in January, and that would be similar timing here. So what I'm telling you is, while this may seem fast and I'm approaching you and saying, hey, I'd like to do something here, the lead time with this type of funding and resources is rather long. So, you know, from when I stand here today to when we'd be closing and maybe starting construction is roughly a year on kind of the best side. If we're not successful, we would be looking to then put it in again next year and try for funding on a new construction deal. But again, this would be kind of a shot at doing it from a historical side and going after the federal credits. So I'm happy to take questions. I know this is kind of a, well, we've just met you and you're asking for this from us. So, you know, I'm not here asking specifically for you to take action on anything. I'm just simply asking for you to consider working with us to figure out if I might be the buyer for that school and be able to convert it into a really useful resource for the community.
Okay, but the timeline, which is very interesting, I think you were just as thorough as you could be, but I am curious, with the timeline you gave, you're saying February the application would be due. There'd have to be action on the board's part even in January for that to happen. Correct?
I would need to go into the state, I would need an option contract.
Okay.
So I would need to show the state that I have site control and I am not just putting in an application for a site that I do not control. Now, the state has some, they have some threshold requirements on documentation, and site control is one that, as long as I can show that I'm working towards it, I can push that off into March. But it's something that typically the state prefers it in February. So yes, it's something that we would have to work pretty quickly on to get an option type contract together that would give me the ability to show site control to the state.
Very good.
You said it's the low-income housing funds that you're applying for in February?
Low-income housing tax credits. This program was enacted in '86 under the Reagan administration, and so it partners private developers like me with federal funding. So I take these tax credits and I sell them to an investor like a Wells Fargo or typically banks or large institutions. And they're not making big returns off these, but what they're doing is satisfying either their CRA needs or they're using the losses or depreciation from the buildings. So,
how successful have you been on those applications?
I would tell you we're probably in the 1% of the 1% in the country as far as a developer goes. Last year we batted at 100%. I had 7 deals I don't know of another developer that did that. So we received 3 allocations in the state of Texas, 1 in Oklahoma, the largest in the history of the state of Colorado, 1 in Kansas, and 1 in Iowa, which was every state we applied in and all the projects we applied for.
Why did you make the comment that the state would like for apartments to be in this area?
Sure. So the state, think of it this way, when I'm going to them with this package, it's like I'm going to an investor. I'm showing them the sites, I'm showing them the demographics, I have market studies on the area that are third party. I'm basically showing them what I would do. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation is charged, while they are the state's they're the state's organization that administers these federal funds. So these are federal funds administered by the state, but KHRC has been charged with making sure that housing is taken care of in the state of Kansas. So they know where the needs are, they keep close track of that. And ever since we've built phase 1 of Stone Post here in Hayes, the state has recognized the need and demand for apartments here. We applied very recently on another site very close to this. The state just wasn't very excited about that location. It was a few blocks east, and they just felt like it wasn't in a good enough area to be funded. So they rejected it for that very reason. This they like the demographics of downtown. They believe, and we've demonstrated, that there's a significant demand here. So it's an organization really charged with following the housing needs of the state and making sure they're helpful in taking care of the workforce and affordable housing needs.
The first stage, I think you said earlier, what year was that for the first stage of Stone Post?
Oh, gosh, I want to say 2006.
Okay, so for 12 years, you say that you're full. Have you been full throughout this time?
We have been at least 96% or better for the entire time. We've never dropped below that. About 18 months ago, we had a little dip, but it was more of internal management operation functions that probably dropped us 3 to 4%. But other than that, yeah, we've had a waiting list of probably north of 20 to 40 people for quite a while now.
What impact does the keep preserving the existing building have because it's in the floodplain?
So keeping the existing structure for me would allow me to pursue historic tax credits. So just pretty much another funding source for me. The fact that it is in the floodplain, since it's an existing structure, that is something that I can potentially get around. Now, if I demo it, I will have to build out of the floodplain like all the rest of our buildings. But really, me keeping the structure is just simply from a historical tax credit perspective. It allows me to ask for less housing tax credits and plug that gap with some historic tax credits. You know, one thing that I'll mention, because I think it's important for people to understand, you're not seeing people run around and develop new apartment complexes in western Kansas that are market rate, meaning anybody can live there. There's a reason for that. I can build the same thing for roughly the same price in Kansas City and get 4 to 5 times the number of rent. So in Salina, you know, the city commission really couldn't figure out, well, why don't you just build it as market rate? And why wouldn't you do that? Well, I'd lose money. No bank would ever lend on that. So this is really a program that allows me to develop new apartments in a community that otherwise wouldn't get them. And then after the compliance period is over, we can turn those into market rate apartments, meaning anybody can live there. So we've just done 2 things. We've taken care of the affordable need, and then once they roll out of the program, we can rent them to anyone, and that gives us new apartments in western Kansas, which they otherwise wouldn't have. So this community here has a 15-year compliance period. The first part of it does. If we build something new, they're now requiring 30-year compliance periods. So if we were to develop this site, we would be under a 30-year affordable housing compliance period. One thing that's interesting, under the new tax code, this is a very bipartisan supported program. They're now allowing us to go, so before we could only go up to 60% of the area median income on rent. So this is making sure people don't spend more than a third of their income on rent, which is considered the healthy. So this now allows us to go up to 80%, and it allows me a range. So your first year teachers, firefighters, policemen, and some even potentially older teachers in the district now will be able to qualify for that, which they hadn't before. So that's one new development of the program that the new tax law just passed last year put into effect. And we think it's really beneficial for Western Kansas because there's people that otherwise wouldn't be able to live there that now, because of the change, will. So it's something potentially that could be beneficial to the teachers in your district.
When would you apply for the historical tax credits?
About the same time. So the historical tax credits, as long as the school qualifies, and I've already done some research with our historical consultant, and we believe it will, that's not the competitive nature. It's these low-income housing tax credits are the very competitive nature. I don't see any problem at all as long as the school qualifies.
I see. Okay. Any other additional comments or questions?
I would just share that we will be talking in the next few days and try to put together something more to share with the board in the meantime until January 14th when our next board meeting is.
Okay. Very good.
Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to talking soon.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, now let's move on to old business. We have two items under old business. We have the first is the Oak Park Medical Complex project, and the second is the superintendent search. Back to the first part, we have 4 items to discuss and to
And I'm very pleased
vote
to
on.
end up having Dominic as a representative from Gilmore and Bell, and he's here to end up doing an introduction on those documents.
Okay.
So I'm very pleased for you to end up sharing with the board at this time.
Very good.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm Dominic Eck with Gilmore and Bell, and we are acting as special tax counsel to the district on this financing.
Okay.
And what that means is we're assisting generally with ensuring that the financing is tax exempt, following all the IRS regulations from that standpoint. And then also working with Bill and his firm on the state law requirements as well that the district needs to go through. As this is old business, you've taken several steps in this process already. The next step would be to approve the resolution tonight, which approves the execution of the various financing documents, including the lease and site lease back and forth with the bank, and the escrow agreement. The site lease is the bank's security, essentially, as the district cannot mortgage their property, so they site lease it to the bank. The bank leases it back to the district on an annual appropriation basis. The district will make semi-annual payments, as you've discussed with the Bank of Hayes, and they need to just annually appropriate for those every budget cycle to make the payments in January and July. Upon approval of the resolution, we will compile all the various documents that are executed, make them into what we call a transcript, just binding them all together, getting a copy to the district, get a copy to the bank, and set us up for a closing on Friday, which is when the money would be available to the district to purchase the building. The other documents that we have sent around and are out for approval under the same resolution are some tax policies and procedures. These are policies to comply with various IRS rules and regulations for tax-exempt financings. These are items that generally the district will already do. It's record-keeping requirements, how you spend your money, how you use the facilities. There are various requirements for who can and who cannot use facilities that are financed with tax-exempt obligations. So, for example, They don't want tax-exempt financing going to help for-profit businesses. They don't want tax-exempt financings going toward, activities they don't want to support with the tax-exempt nature of this lease.
Okay.
So those are the other documents up for approval tonight. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions, anyone? Okay.
Make a motion.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'll make a motion to authorize the board vice president to sign the following documents related to Oak Park Medical Complex project, but not limited to lease purchase agreement resolution, transcript of proceedings for lease purchase agreement between USD 49 and the Bank of Hayes, tax compliance agreement and procedures, site lease purchase agreement between USD 49 and the Bank of Hayes, and ESCO agreement between USD 49 and the Bank of Hayes.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Has the property changed ownership? The parcel that was at issue?
The parcel that's at issue will be closed first, and then the remaining 5 parcels then will close with 489. There's been an agreement reached between both those parties, so that should not be an issue.
How are we voting on this if that hasn't been completed yet? I'm just
Are you
curious.
voting on what?
Well, as far as these documents and the other stuff, if the stuff hasn't even changed hands, or, I mean, I realize you're saying there's an agreement, but.
Well, we entered an agreement with the party who has the option to purchase that property.
Okay.
So that would be the only appropriate party that we could agree with.
Gotcha.
And that'll happen Friday as well.
Pardon?
That'll happen Friday as well?
Yes, that'll happen first.
First on Friday, yeah.
Because if that doesn't close, then, as Lance indicates, then we're not going any farther.
I see.
And those parties, they understand that. And they've reached an agreement to put some excess proceeds into escrow, and then they can fight it out later.
I see, okay.
So
Nice.
it won't be our problem.
Gotcha.
That sounds good. Okay, any other discussion? Any other comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, I record 4 ayes and 2 opposed, so it passes 4-2. All right, that's finished. Now, the next would be,
If I
go
may
ahead.
ask,
Yep, please.
Mike, we do have a notary coming in
Mhm.
to take care of the signatures. And I just want to point that out when she does come in, because we were hoping to arrange that Dominic could walk away with the documents. He wants to leave, and I'm sorry, but we have you here maybe for 10 more minutes because the notary's coming in about 8 o'clock. So when the notary comes in, if we could have maybe just a very short recess
Okay.
so that then you could do the signatures, Mike. And
All right,
okay, thank you.
very good. So a question I have is I was under the impression we needed to approve the following 3 items, or is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The next step was to ask for motions for the next,
Right,
Three other- okay,
there's 3
very good.
other NABLEs, which Ron Ferris is here, which I'm very pleased representing NABLEs. You have seen Ron on a couple occasions. He's been here, and actually, he's probably his second home from the standpoint of the work that he, NABLE's involvement with the medical center here in Hayes. But if he's here for any questions that you might have with the contract of trying to end up working with them, and also then, well, he's not here for DLR, but that's another contract with our contract and working with DLR in respect to this particular project.
very good.
So,
Well, before I ask for a motion, does anybody have any questions of our
Well, that would
guest?
I think you need the motion first, and then you have the discussion.
Well, all right, that sounds good. Do I have a motion to approve the Nabol's construction manager contract for the renovation of the Oak Park Medical Complex?
I will move on that motion as presented.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion, including questions of our guest in the audience.
I do have a question to ask, although I know the answer. I want Ron to be able to share it. It's a matter of that relationship of how will things work from the standpoint of Nabholz and Paul Wartenberger. Is there, how does that end up working with this project?
Sure. So under this particular contract, which is a CMA contract, construction manager agent or agency, we would be acting on behalf of the district simply as a manager of the process. Under the CMA delivery method, we are not able to actually self-perform any construction work. We're just simply there to manage the process. What we would do is open up the bidding for general contractors to actually be on site, self-performing the task, bidding out any electrical, plumbing, any of the other trade packages. So we would actually hold a competition for a general contractors, and so we assume that Paul Wartenberger Construction, commercial builders, perhaps others here in Hayes would actually bid on that to be the general contractor for the project. The reason the CMA works so well in this situation, it's a smaller project, and number two, we can go ahead and get started. This is a fast-track project. It has to be done by August the 1st. Design is not done yet. So what we can go ahead is, if you approve our contract tonight, we can go ahead and have that competition, get the general contractor on board, and then we can go ahead and start doing some of the interior demo work, clearing out the inside of the building and getting it prepped for construction while the design is being complete. So it's a great vehicle for doing a fast track, a smaller fast track project.
Very good.
Bill, I just had a quick question. Ron, while I appreciate everything that Nabholz has done as well as DLR, are we not required, like similar to with the bond and that, to bid any of this stuff out?
Not on a personal service contract.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that.
We're just getting around that by not doing a true bid on the contractor, right? I mean, we're bidding for the service, right, which allows them to do that process.
Anything else for Ron?
I do.
Sure.
So what is your fee?
Our fee, we put in a fee of $30,000.
That's it?
That's it.
So at the end, it lists a bunch of hourly rates?
Now, there are some hourly rates for Russ Bedford, who grew up here in Hayes, for Hayes State grad, works for Nabholz. He would be the project manager. He would likely be the person that would come once a month, or however often you deem him to come and address the board and update you on the progress of the process of the project. But we have a general superintendent that stopped in a couple times a month to also check on the progress of the project. But we have a small fee because we wanted the majority of the funds to stay local and have a general contractor in there, a local general contractor working in there. So we just wanted to manage the process.
How much are the additional, those, I assume the second person you talked about, they would get a fee as well?
The general contractor?
Well, no, they'll get paid by whatever they bid, right?
Correct.
But you said there'll be a construction, I can't remember the name, what you said of the second one, but you talked about two different people that would come in and check things over.
Those are Nabholz employees.
Right.
So Russ Bedford would be the one that was helping with the pay applications every month and whatnot. But the hours are going to be minimal compared to if we had to staff somebody out here full time.
So who would the other person be then?
So the other person that I mentioned is James McElhaney, who's our general superintendent for Nabholz for the state of Kansas.
And his time would be, how frequently would he be out?
I'm sorry.
How frequently would he be out?
Probably 2 or 3 times a month.
And is his part of the 30,000 or is it extra?
That's in addition to.
And so he would be, his title was what?
General Superintendent.
So he's at 104 an hour?
Correct.
And then Beffert would be at 95?
Correct.
And then you don't know how, do we pay mileage? Do we pay for their trip out?
So I believe it's just for time.
But do we pay for their time driving out?
I'd have to find that out for
Do you know on a project, I mean, how many projects similar to this have you done?
you. Thousands.
And how, of those, do you know approximately what their costs?
Typically, our fee would be larger. I mean, we kept our fee really small here to try to keep the majority of the dollars local.
But do you have any estimate on how many hours of additional time we'd have between the project and the general superintendent?
I'm guessing that Russ Beffert might have 8 hours a month over the course of the eight months. James McElhaney might have 4 to 8 hours a month.
So anywhere from 32 to 64 hours each?
Could be.
So another $8,000 to $12,000 roughly?
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, I record 4 ayes and 2 nays. Passes 4-2. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. All right, the next is the DLR Group Architect contract.
The DLR contract, oh, yeah. Is it possible to take just a short recess?
Sure.
We have our.
Go ahead.
We could get the signatures.
Oh, reset.
Then. My
question is, do we need okay, we can take 5 minutes. Want to take a 5-minute recess?
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. 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 Oh, okay. Good, good, sounds good.
No, that's the only reason I said
Oh, I
just in
figured-
case. I figured if I could help, I would. So.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, I figured it was.
Fixed now.
No, there's not. It is what it is. We're doing everything we can.
That's a different issue.
Yeah. As good as possible. And we were
Good, 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 okay. Good. I figured as much, of course. Okay, we almost here. Situations change. You know, and somebody's we can control. Yeah, so he's not back yet. Key players. All right, folks, I think we'll get back to business here. We have two more items to approve, and then we can move on to the second item on the under old business. I'll just go ahead and ask for a motion. Do I have a motion to approve the DLR Group Architect contract for the renovation of the Oak Park Medical Complex? Paul?
I'll make the motion as presented.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm just curious, what is the total cost?
150,000. No, that's, I say 150,000 is the total. That is the set cost. There can be added costs onto that if, and they are listed.
What would some of those be?
Sorry.
Worked out in the section.
What's
that? 1111?
I'm sorry, I wasn't. I know I saw it in here.
Was that the reimbursable expenses?
Looks like additional services. There's a whole bunch of them listed here. Additional services, there's no prices though. Page 12.
It would principally be due to modifications in the design as they get into it. We require additional.
By us?
By us, yeah.
Or Navol? And those would be, is it just a typical change order type thing that would be based on the change, or is there an hourly?
Well, I'm not finding that.
Now, let's see. I thought I saw something.
I didn't see it spelled out anywhere. Wait on. For additional services designated in section 4.1, the owner shall compensate the architect as follows.
Did you say 4.1?
4.1. Additional services designated in section 4.1, the owner shall compensate the architect as follows. Insert amount of or basis for compensation if necessary.
What is everything that they're going to be doing for that $150,000?
I'm sorry.
Under 11.5, it shows.
Spells it out.
Schematic design phase is 15% of it, design development phase is 20, construction document phase is 35, bidding or negotiations 5, construction phase 25. I didn't add them up, but they say that equals, looks like it does equal 100%.
Actually, it ends up referring back to paragraph 11.3, and then it's left blank.
Mm-hmm.
So there wouldn't be any agreement as to what the additional compensation would be.
Sounds like something
Just
to
insert amount.
Yeah.
Just said it's mutually agreed upon with the owner and architect, so I guess for each change order, you'd have a,
Right.
have to give you a number.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, I'll ask for, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 4 ayes, 2 noes. It passes 4-2-2. All right, the third item. Can I have a motion to approve the contract Addendum C regarding property address 2501 East, 13th, Units A, 8, 9, Building 2, Hayes, Kansas, 67601-2111.
That would be an addendum. The seller would like to take that money and use it on a 1031 tax exchange. So he'll take part or all the sale proceeds and place those with a qualified intermediary. Then he's got 180 days to find replacement property to use that money, and then that ends up being a tax-free exchange to the seller. It has no impact on the school district.
Just some more paperwork.
But we have to approve it.
It could be some more paperwork, particularly at the time of closing, but it doesn't.
Okay, and Mandy will be back
And
by
he can
then?
probably do it anyway, even if it's not an addendum to the contract. But normally that language is put in a contract. And it's apparently, to me, something that the seller decided he wanted to do after he entered into the original contract.
Okay.
So the bottom
But it
line
won't cost
is,
us any money.
it doesn't have any impact on the closing or on the district itself.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve the contract Addendum C regarding the property address 2501 East 13th, Units 8, 9, Building 2, Hayes, Kansas, 67601-21111.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sophia beat you to it. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 4-2-2. All right, now we're to the second item on our old business agenda, the superintendent search. I understand we have Gary Seacrest here, field specialist for the Kansas Association of School Boards. So you're up. Okay.
Thank you very much for having us and trusting us to assist you with your superintendent search. As Mr. Walker said, I'm Gary Seacrest with the Leadership Division of KASB. Got my colleague, Dr. Brian George, who also he is the Director of Leadership Services, and we spent the day together conducting focus groups on your boards, on your behalf, to identify the characteristics that they wish to see in their new superintendent. So as you can see in front of you, that is the compilation of the work that was done today. We met with 5 different groups. If you can see on the back page is the number that were in attendance in each of those groups. At the Hayes High staff at 7 o'clock this morning, we had 7 individuals. The district administration, mid-morning, we had 16. At the, we had a very active community meeting that met in here at noon. Lunch was provided to them. As you can see, we had a great number there, a very good group. And then the Rockwell staff, the staff that work in this building were here. There was 9 of those individuals. And then this afternoon, we met at the middle school and met with the staff that wished to be there. And you can see we had 6 individuals for a total of 56 folks that came out. So we had some very good input, people that were willing to discuss with us, and we appreciate that. So we would like to lead you through a quick activity to go through this to see if these characteristics match what the board is wishing for in their new superintendent. We asked each of these groups the same 4 questions because our focus or our hope is to start having some trends to develop. The characteristics are really important for us and for you is because we, when we start vetting the candidates, we do our best to try to match the candidates to the characteristics that you wish. We also think it's very important that when you identify your interview questions, that you are asking the questions that match with the characteristics you're wanting. So for an example, if communications is really important, you need to ask questions about communication. So we'll talk about that later. The first question, and it happens to be the first page here, and when you see those numbers to the left of the responses, those numbers match up to small groups within. So we broke them up into groups of 3 or 4.
Okay.
And then we asked them to come to consensus through great discussion within that small group to identify 2 or 3 of the personal or leadership traits they would like to see in their new superintendent. And then we'd go back and each group would report those out. So when you see, for an example, on the first page, integrity was number 1. So 8 is not 8 individuals. 8 is 8 groups within the groups that we met today. So that is really not uncommon. That first thing that you saw or that we saw with that was integrity. If we don't get integrity, we simply usually got the words honesty, those types of things. So great personal qualifications or qualities, integrity. The next one that we had, so 7 different groups, said the word fortitude came out several times. You only see it listed, but it came out several times. We kind of lump these together. I'll be real honest with you. We did this again tomorrow morning. We might lump them a little bit different, but we try to take the responses and lump them in. So you can see words like fortitude, statements, resiliency, accepts challenges with confidence, those types of things, perseverance. 7 different groups mention something that would say fortitude. The next one, still with 7, is communications. If it had something to do with communications, we lumped it into one set. So 8, 7, and 7, and then we get down to 4. So you can see that there were, of those particular items that you're reading, smaller numbers of group. Does not mean they're not important, but they didn't really rise to the top like the first 3 did there. So before we go to question number 2, what I would like to ask each individual board member, you get to work by yourself because you are the board and you will make this decision. I would like you to think as an individual, what would be the 2 personal or leadership traits you would like to see. You can obviously pick something from this, or if there's a word that you wish was in there, that's your opportunity. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of time, not a whole lot of time, and we're going to get through this and get through what we need to do. But I want to get through here, so we're going to then record yours. Dr. Jordan will record those, and then we'll see how your responses match up with the public and staff and your employees to see if you are matching.
We're just doing the first question, so
First
we'll
question.
go through each one doing the same process.
Okay. So Luke, I'm going to put you on the spot because we're doing this really fast. So I asked you to come up with 2, but right now just give me 1 that you would like to say. What would be one of the personal or leadership traits that you believe very important in the new superintendent?
I think I'm kind of swayed because I have all the answers here in front of me already, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, and
that's good.
I feel bad, but I mean, I guess for me, it probably would be integrity and communication.
Okay, very good. All right. So, Ms. Rose, what would be one of them that you would like to mention? Could be something you're seeing, something.
Communication.
Communication, all right. Mr. Walker?
Integrity.
Integrity, all right. Mr. Bickle?
I don't know that I can pick one. They're all important as far as for a good leader. So
yeah.
And that's why we ask those groups if they have 2 or 3, because otherwise they come up with 20 and then it waters down the responses, so we really want them. So, you good with your answer? All right, Mr. Schwartz.
So we're just wanting a personality trait
or a leadership trait, quality that you think is important in your superintendent.
I think mine's kind of the same all the way around, but I think an effective manager.
Okay, an effective manager?
Yeah,
all right.
That's good.
Then Dr. Adams, anything you'd like to say?
Innovative.
Innovative. Okay, very good. So if we go back to Mr. O'Borney, is there a second one that you want to make sure that gets recorded?
Just that communication.
Okay, the communication, you've already said that. Ms. Rose?
Financially savvy.
Okay, financially savvy.
The second one.
Did you see that on the list, right?
Yes. I thought this was what I was thinking.
You're absolutely right.
How about this guy?
Mr. Walker?
I was thinking, I guess innovative's on here. I was thinking more like open to new ideas, so I guess innovative.
You bet. Innovative, somebody with new ideas. Mr. Bickle, anything else you'd like to be specific about?
I guess to piggyback on that, I mean, somebody that thinks outside the box and not happy with the status
Somebody
quo.
that thinks outside of the box. Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, communication.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Adams?
Team builder.
Team builder, okay. Now, I want you to consider what you just heard, and I think you've heard it, and maybe Dr. Jordan can
Read it back. I have a couple votes for integrity, 3 talked about communication, or somebody that's really good with communication. And I'm assuming it's within the context of communication, you're listening, speaking, being approachable. One person said they're all important, so it's hard to prioritize. Somebody that's an effective manager, innovative, open to new ideas, outside the box thinker, financially savvy, and team builder.
So, as a board, do you feel like what you just said, and I know it was very quick, do they match what you believe that we heard today, or is it completely different?
I think it seems to be
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep, sounds good.
The second question. Once again, we work in small groups, and the second question is this. It seems to be a simple answer. You have many great things. You have strengths within your community and your school district. But we wanted them, rather than just make a list of 200 wonderful things, what are the strengths and good points of your district and or community, if you choose to go that far, that you want the new superintendent to understand and support? So when they come in, these are the things that we're really proud of. We want the new person to understand these and support these great things. So the same drill as the board. If you can come up with 1 or 2 of those particular items, we'll give you a little bit of time. You need to consider that based upon what you see. If you look at those, number 2, the question, and we'll go down through those so that we can review those with you. We didn't really have anything that came out real clear, but obviously the one with the most had 5 responses. It's the programs that you have within your district. Now, some of them that were listed were your Safe and Civil Schools, which I think is called Foundations Training from our understanding. The Early Ed Center, West Side, some of the offerings that you have for non-academics, and your early childhood were some of the specifics. So with 5, they mentioned some of your programs that you have that they want the new superintendent to understand and support. The next one with 4, in the ease of description, might simply believe that you have a wonderful staff, which is easy to see for us, and they're pretty dedicated on what they're doing for the children of the school district. And that's something they want the new superintendent to understand and support. And then the next one with 4 is we heard quite a bit about your technology, your one-to-one K-12, and not only that you offer that, but yet your instructors and your students are using it wisely for instruction within your classrooms. So obviously there are more of those. You can look through some of those other responses while you're contemplating your responses. But once again, we ask that you consider 1 to 2 as an individual, and we'll do the same drill. Dr. Adams, are you ready to give us one? Sure. You knew it was going to happen.
I knew it. Yeah. I'd say community pride of the school system.
Community pride, thank you. Mr. Schwartz?
I think the quality education.
Okay. That's being offered by your school district?
Right.
Yes, very good, thank you. Mr. Bickle?
I'd say the community resources in that throughout the...
Yeah, you know, that may not have come up real big, but we did hear that you have some wonderful community resources that would be unique to your community. So they want this person to be able to hook into those different entities. Mr. Walker.
I think we do have a dedicated staff, but I think there's a twist to it. I think we have an innovative staff as well, often when given the opportunity.
So you have students that, or excuse me, staff that's willing to be innovative, given the opportunity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thanks.
Ms. Young?
Yes. I don't know if I'm actually answering the question correctly, but I think one of the strengths that we have throughout the district would be a drive to achieve higher standards.
The drive to achieve higher standards.
Yes.
You bet. Did you get prompted to that response by something you read in there, or is that?
No,
Right.
I was prompted to say that, and then when I read other things, I felt like I was answering it wrong.
Thank you for saying that. Mr. O'Brien.
I would say the importance of our staff for the success of our overall goals.
Are you ready to give us your number 2?
I actually am. Continue with forward thinking of our programs and our teaching methods.
Okay, so we've heard that a little bit already. So, Ms. Young?
Can I be skipped for a second?
Say it again.
Skip me for a second, please.
Oh.
Come back later.
Okay. Mr. Walker?
I'll go with community resources. There's plenty of community resources in the area. Yeah.
Mr. Biggle?
I would say probably in line with the one where they're talking about prime for change with a lot of the new staff, things like that, and actually getting somebody again that goes back to thinking outside of the box. And
this group, innovation in some way.
Yeah.
Mr. Schwartz?
Community resources.
Community resources? Community resources. Same thing, okay, community resources. So now that you have heard,
Get it back to Sophie. Sophie didn't have a chance.
I'll just say community resources. It's a sincere one.
Okay, all right.
All right, so what I heard is that a lot of community pride in the school system, quality of the education offered by the school district. We had 5 mentioned community resources that are available to support the school system. When given the opportunity, our staff is very dedicated and innovative. We have a drive to achieve higher standards within the district. There is an importance placed on our staff helping us achieve our overall goals. We need to continue to be forward thinking, and we are primed for change with a lot of new staff.
So as a board, how do you feel like your responses match to what you heard or we heard from the public today?
Well, they seem to match up pretty well. I think we had a few extra twists to what was said earlier.
But the major concepts would
Yeah.
be fairly close.
I think so.
Okay. Any other comments from the board in that regard? All right. The next question, as you can imagine, when we talk about strengths and good points, we feel like we need to also ask them about the challenges and the critical needs within your district. And we ask this question in this manner. What are the challenges, the critical needs that the new superintendent needs to understand and address? We didn't say fix, but these individuals that we asked this question, when the new superintendent comes in on July 1, what's that critical need, the challenges that you know they may have to address soon into their tenure? As you can see, the number 1 was something to do with facilities. And I think as outside neutral lookers into that, we came into thinking, well, that's just going to overpower everything. So, you can see it did rise to the top, but it didn't really separate itself. Number 2, as you can see, there are some interesting items. You can see 6 groups said something about rebuilding professional relationships between the board, administration, and teachers. So that kind of encapsulates that. So Dr. Jordan and I were talking about that. That one would be what we'd see as your internal relationships with your staff, the internal relationships with the staff. The next one with 4 is similar, but need for public relations to rebuild trust with the community. So we're looking at that. That could be considered as the external relationships with staff.
Okay.
And then the next one that had 5, excuse us for not having that tabulated in correct form, is that the board, a unification within the board and the administration. So that one, if we had to encapsulate it in one little term, we might say that's the board relations.
Okay.
So, Dr. Jordan, any clarification on that?
I'd also point out there, back on the second one, to rebuild professional relationships, the word trust came up a trust has been shaken between the different layers within the district, board, administration to teachers. That's an area where some additional work and development needs to happen with somebody new coming in. And number 5 there, we had some interesting conversations with the political dynamics of the board. They understand, the groups that we talked to today, it's not the superintendent that comes in and tells the board how to run or how to do their work, but there has to be a working relationship, a team. We call it the grade 8 often, is how we refer to it, as the 7 board members and the superintendent being on the same page with the direction and the vision that they want to go for the benefit of kids. So that's kind of some context around some of those ideas that came up today.
All right, so let's do this. So once again, 2 items. If each board member would go through that as a result of what you see, it could be something different. But what would be the 2 items that you believe may be a challenge or a critical need that the new superintendent is going to address soon after their tenure begins? So if you can come up with 2, I'll give you a little time to operate. Once again, it could be something you've already seen. It could be something completely different. This is your hire. We'll get started. Mr. Walker, we're going to start with you as the Vice President.
I can't pass on this one.
Well, you can say whatever you want.
No, that's all good. You know, I'm having a hard time deciding which way to go here, but boy, facilities, rebuilding, relationships. No, I'll just say rebuild trust with the community.
Okay. And you know, it's interesting when also facilities was the number 1, but a lot of the folks, as I said, you know, we need facilities, but a lot of them were saying, we know it's just not something we go out, that it's got to be a community-wide thing. It comes through great communications and great relationships between community entities. So they knew.
It's connected.
Sometimes we think it's real simple. We're going to have a bond issue, we're going to pass, but there's so many things that have to be working within.
Right.
All right, Mr. Bickle, anything you'd like to say?
I'd say bridging the divide between public and private and unifying the community.
Good, okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Schwartz.
That's a tough one. I think just
all the above.
well, it ties into kind of what my previous one was, but I think it's just a management thing. You know, just the. I think there's a lot of those pieces and components that aren't there, and that I think that those arrive. A lot of these other things fall into place: the trust, the communication. Yeah, I don't know that the bond falls into place. I mean, that's a whole different animal. But.
So management, once again, of the district, you bet. It makes sense. Dr. Adams.
That's a good. Say facilities planning.
Facilities planning, all right. Mr. O'Borney.
I had board unification and rebuilding trust, and when I was with trust, I was looking at both community and internal. So I mean, both external and internal when it comes to that. So.
Ms. Young?
Yeah.
My number 1 was staff retention.
Staff retention. All right. Very good.
Yeah, I want to go along the same lines. Some forward think, some planning to with regard to staff retention and maybe innovative ways to hire younger, newer teachers. I'm rambling here. It's getting late.
Actually attracting staff.
Yeah, I think.
All right, Mr. Bickle.
A lot of it, I mean, goes back to some of what some of the others have said. I mean, still dealing with obviously facilities, and a lot of it, again, so much of that ties together that, I mean, it's...
Facilities. All right, thank you. Mr. Schwartz, you have a number 2?
Yeah, maybe I might change my other one around, but long-range planning.
So long-range planning, bit. So let's look out and see what we need in 5 years, and let's get that plan, and let's put that, let's organize that through the management that you use it. All right. Dr. Adams.
Professional pathways for teachers.
Professional
pathways
for teachers. Yes. All right. For us.
That's what I was trying to say, but I couldn't get the reference.
So, are you talking about getting to their certifications for highly qualified positions? Or?
It's actually, instead of just always saying you're going to be doing the same job for 30 years, like, you know, what is there within the district that may not cost additional money, but we give you the value that you want to stay in the profession or stay here. Okay. It doesn't have to be a money solution.
So the incentive doesn't have to be financial. Incentive to continue your career path.
Yeah. Go back to teacherpreneur thing. You're right. I'm going back to work talk. But
that's all over here. So,
yeah. Right.
Mr. O'Boyne, have you been able to give yourself
facilities?
All right.
Community relations.
All right. Ms. Walker, have you done your second?
I think I did, yes.
I see you taking the easy way. Oh, yeah. All right.
What are you, crazy? Of course.
Yeah, please read those back.
So here's what I have. Rebuild trust within the community. That's 2. There were 2 people that mentioned that. Bridging the divide between public and private, uniting the community. Leadership and management of the direction for the district. We had 3 on facility planning, board unification, rebuilding trust internally and externally. Had a couple on staff retention, find innovative ways to recruit and attract staff. Long-range planning with a vision for the future. Professional pathways for teachers to help them see their future steps within the district and see and feel their value to the district. And then community relations also tied back with rebuild trust within the community. So,
Board, how do you feel about what you said versus what we heard during the day? How should we interpret what we heard today based upon the board's opinions?
pretty close.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's good.
I think they know us best.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
They know us better than we know.
Good. Yeah, we wouldn't have asked them for input unless we were going to listen to them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last question, the rules change. You may notice there's many more tallies because we asked each individual had the opportunity to give their own trait. So this was no longer a group activity. So we'll do the same thing. Board, you're only going to get 1 response. And the question is this. What is the single trait that you would hope the board would use when trying to decide between one great candidate and another great candidate? So at the conclusion of your interviews, you've had good interviews, but 2 stand out. They seem to match your characteristics. They have similar experiences. But if you were the fortunate only board member that night, what would be the single trait you would use to choose between one great candidate and the other great candidate? So I'll give you each an individual opportunity to think about that single trait. That's why you see a lot more numbers, because this is individual rather than a group activity. I know you're not ready when you're not making eye contact. Anybody that thinks they're ready can just spill it out and we'll see where it goes. So, anybody want to start? What's the single trait that you hope the board would use to choose between one candidate over the other?
All things being equal.
Yes, sir.
It's a tough one. It's a big assumption.
It is. But this is where we believe the rubber meets the road, because this has been helpful during board deliberations when they're trying to decide between the 2 best candidates.
It's kind of a way to also get you thinking about what if somebody walks in and is really flashy with a great resume or a really slick talker. At the end of the process, what can we come back to and say, well, they had this, and that's why that's the best person, and not necessarily the slickest talker that won't date with us. That's how I'd say someone who's genuine or a leader.
Okay, genuine leader. All right, very good. So now, I'm going to ask, is there anybody else that said something you could bunch into the group of genuine leader? If you do, you're using your single trait. Is there anybody that would match yours?
Can I argue with Lance on that? Well, I mean, the problem with that is that sounds great, but a leader, what is that?
Yep.
And, you know, you can have 7 different ideas of what quantifies a leader.
A leader is in your own
Right,
mind.
and maybe that's okay, but you would think you'd want something. Integrity seems to be, I mean, you can have different opinions, but it's pretty focused. I mean, you either have it or you don't. So, you know,
I agree.
and I don't know that I've got the right answer, but experience might be.
All right, so successful experience, is that your
Or
response,
just-
or are we talking out loud right now?
No, I mean, I don't know if that's the right one, but I'm just saying that to me, it just seems like what I would want is somebody that's kind of been there and done that and has a track record and, you know, has a toolbox they can go to.
They have a successful track record because they have genuine leadership.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
If both are equal.
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy? All right.
Yeah, trustworthy is what I wrote down. And then I don't think Lance was wrong. Just because if you had 2 there, I would want to go with whoever felt more genuine.
Sure,
They're
you bet.
equal.
Yeah, we know who you are, you're genuine, you bet. All right.
So you want trustworthy or genuine for you?
Trustworthy.
Okay. All right. Mr. O'Borney.
Copies of
The initial thought is like integrity or honesty.
Okay, integrity.
Because those really do go together.
They go together, you bet. And we were kind of joking around with the group, so Dr. Jordan, we're tired of our own jokes, but we were thinking about applying, but we're no longer eligible. Integrity seems to be a big thing. So.
Yeah, okay.
And Mr. Walker, I don't think we've heard yours yet.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I want to throw in someone that's innovative.
Okay, innovative. So when you have an opportunity, you can repeat those things.
So I have genuine leader, I have successful experience or successful track record. 2 that mentioned trustworthy, I have integrity or honesty, and then I have innovative. So how do those feel compared to what we heard versus what you were forced to do in a quick amount of time?
They had a lot of communication, which I didn't really hear in our group.
Yeah, good point.
But I think that the communication was brought up in several
Being
other
a great
aspects.
leader, having successful experience, you probably demonstrated some great communication skills. Absolutely. Anybody else wish to comment in that regard?
I see they have the word commitment a few times.
Yes, thank you for that. One of the things, if you can see on that last page, you see 15 said something with integrity, somebody that's highly principled, but the number 7 individuals, remember, not groups now, said a commitment to the community, but when a commitment to the community really meant we would like our superintendent to have residents in our community.
Okay.
Your last 2 were well-meaning, but you know they didn't have full residents within your community.
Sure.
And we know there's extenuating circumstances. We're well aware of that. But
What's the average tenure for a superintendent?
would you please repeat? He's done some research.
You had that before today. Okay.
Yeah, we had that a few times today. So last year in December, I was curious just to see how things have changed in Kansas. And last year in December, there was between 70 and 75, I think it was 73% of the districts in the state had a different superintendent in place than they did 3 years prior.
Okay.
So there's 286 districts in the state of Kansas. Roughly 70 to 75% of those have a different superintendent in place than they did 3 years ago. So there's a lot of turnover, but there's factors involved there. So the median district size in Kansas is about 550 students.
Okay.
And a lot of that churn that you see happens in these lower or these smaller sized districts.
Okay.
On a regular basis.
What was the reason? Maybe you're getting to that.
I'm just headed right now. So what we've seen in the state is there's been a tremendous amount of retirement. And we had a tremendous amount of retirement in the largest kind of 25% of the districts in the state over the last couple of years. Well, traditionally when that happens, what you see is these largest district superintendents retire. You have people that move up from a smaller district to a larger district. And so then that just starts this cycle. And superintendents, you know, they're the same as your educators that are in your district. There's a bubble coming through right now. And we're starting to see the front end of that. So that's why we're seeing a lot of this churn. So that's a really long answer to the average tenure question. The answer is it depends. The larger the districts you get into, you traditionally see those tenures or those lengths of time stretch out a little bit more than in the smaller districts.
On average, is it fair to say 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years. Yeah, your larger districts is a little longer than that, obviously.
Yeah.
You get into your top, 20 districts in the state, you'll see some, 7 to 15-year runs in those districts. Your smaller ones, There's districts that we work in, they're like, we know in about every 2 to 3 years we're going to be doing this because that's just where they are in the hierarchy leadership. But we also tell districts that that relationship, especially in these larger districts, that tenure depends a tremendous amount on the relationship between the board and the superintendent. And if we have a great working relationship, the superintendent's feeling that their work is meeting the needs of your district, the board's feeling like they're getting good information and good guidance, that's when that's a great relationship and it can stretch out. Because we often will get in the interview process, or right before you guys start interviewing and we're screening candidates, we'll get the question, well, how long do you think this person will stay? And we'll come back at you and say, they'll stay as long as you want them here, and they're doing the work that you want. And that's the reality. In a district your size, you have a lot going for you. You're in a great location in the state. You've got the college here. You've got a lot of things going for you that people look at Hayes and say, oh, that's someplace that I want to be for a long run. So your task as a board is, how do we keep them here? If we get the right person, how do we build that relationship and keep them? And you're a district that's got enough size and has enough to offer that you can keep somebody for a long run. You've had some history of that. If you go back and look at your superintendents, that you've had some that have stayed for quite a run.
Gary, do we get our money back since you told us last time they would stay here as long as we wanted?
I kind of said that, just in a longer version. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Bickle, for bringing that up.
Very good.
Well, it's interesting. I have pulled out the characteristics from 2 years ago, basically, April of 2016. We conducted the same thing. The first question on the leadership and personal qualities, the number one was somebody that they said strong backbone and advised, but would come very close to that fortitude question. Number two, somebody that's got some integrity and honesty, which comes right back down to the character. So in our opinion, those questions or the responses did not change much from last time to this next time. On the strengths of your district, the first couple of items, somebody that's highly qualified, or excuse me, that you have a highly qualified, dedicated staff. So that wasn't your number one this time, but it was high on the list. That one stood out tremendously, from 15 groups to 5 groups. So so everything else was fairly low on the totem pole. The item with the challenges and critical needs, with 8 groups, was bond issue facility needs, so that's the same thing. But once again, that really didn't separate itself. Once again, it came down with 7 groups, had something to do with relationships between the board, staff, community, superintendent. So very similar to what we saw today. And then the single trait, on the last question, the single trait came out just much like Mr. Schwartz, proven successful leadership in previous positions was the number one of the single trait. Okay. So I'd like you to remember for a little thing that we're going to talk about later on how close those characteristics match what you're doing now. Any questions on characteristics before we move you to the next session so you know what you need to do in preparation for your interviews? All right.
Nope. We're good.
Mr. Walker, proceed.
No, please
All right.
move ahead.
All
Yes.
right. Very good.
I
In front of you, you may have noticed there's a manual in front of you that we've placed in much like this. And if you could turn to page 31, which would be in your phase, right after your phase 2 tab. There's some items that you as a board need to start considering so that you are prepared for your interviews. So we're going to lead you through this. The good news is you've done some of these already. The first 2 items are deciding on your characteristics group, so that has been concluded. Thank you for that. Want to make sure that you are aware, you don't have to look at it right now, but on page 44 is a list of the questions you cannot ask, and I would suggest, if with board permission, that maybe Mrs. Wassinger would have a copy of that in front of each board member during the interviews. It's the obvious things. You can't ask age, how many children they have, whether they're married, what church they go to, those types of things. And Dr. Jordan, anytime you want to add in here, feel free.
I'm just smiling because there's some things in the comments that were shared today that just because the public said this is a characteristic of quality doesn't necessarily mean you can ask it. Yeah. Like as kids that lives in the district, it's one of those things. Right.
Can you not ask them if they're going to live in the district?
Yes.
Live in the district, yes, but if they have kids, that's off limits.
Yeah. Many of them said we want them to be committed to their single trait was they cheated. We want somebody that's committed with kids. I mean, you know. So.
Yeah. If we think that having them live in the district is that important, we just make a board policy that says. Superintendent must live within the district.
Yes, I do.
One of the things that we will ask them, or the day of the screening, of which we'll review, when the screening team has come to agreement on the names we would recommend to you, we will call them that afternoon. But I want you to be aware that does not commit you. Here's what the conversation may sound like. Mr. O'Borney, this is Gary Sechrist with KSB. We're assisting the Hayes District with screening, and they all know when screening day, so when they get a phone call from one of us, they know something's up. The screening team believes you to be a top candidate, but before we bring your name forth, we need to ask you a few questions. Okay. First of all, do you still have extreme interest in this position? Which means this is not a practice. By the time you get here, you need to decide this is a place you want to be. Now, they may decide later after the interview, but when they come, they fully intend to be your superintendent. Oh, absolutely, Mr. Sechrist. All right, secondly, if you're fortunate to get a phone call from the board president tonight, will you be able to accept an interview between this time frame? Oh, absolutely. Thirdly, if you are the fortunate candidate, are you willing to move into the school district? They'll either say yes, or they might say, got a daughter that's going to be a senior next year. Right. My husband's going to stick around with him, but we plan on moving. So, all right, I'm going to tell the board that may or may not be a determining factor, but you're going to know that. Okay. All right, so then the board can make that decision.
I have a question. I might be getting ahead of the process or whatever, but last time we always had dinner and stuff with them and had our spouses. Are we going to do something like that?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what an interview day may look like when we get to that point. We'll be happy to answer your question at that point, but yes, we will suggest a dinner with the candidate and their
some
guests.
Some of this stuff always seems to come up in that type of setting.
Most of your candidates know that those are assets that they bring to this position if they have family, if they're going to move to the community, and they work that into conversation. You can't ask questions about it, but they can sure share that information in that process.
Right. They want you to know if they have children that will be in school age. They want you to know that. You bet. All right. So the next thing is we need to identify, when I say we, you, but I would give you some suggestions. You need to identify the questions that you would like to ask in an interview. Now, in the back of this manual, there are more questions than you would ever ask. So there's a bank of questions here. I am aware, and the reason I told you about the characteristics from 2016 and how closely they matched, you do have 21 questions that you identified in 2016. And we typically ask you to identify the questions that have something to do with your characteristics or what you really want to know. So you have a choice here in that you can identify new questions, or that you could consider just using the questions that were identified a couple of years ago. So that is a decision the board needs to make. If you choose not to use these and you want to identify, there would be a system that I can assist you with to get that done fairly easily. But you wouldn't want to do that if you already know these are what you want to use. So, Mr. Walker, I guess you'd like to have some conversation about that to see where you want to go.
Well, I think we did pass around the questions we had last time. I think I saw those through email. But so you actually would like us to decide which way to go tonight?
Well, and you don't have to. The only reason I'd say, if you want to identify new questions, the process that we would recommend to you would be the following. Is that each one of you would go through that bank of questions, choose the 21 questions that you would hope to get asked that night. And then you would send those to Mrs. Wassinger, your electronic question 1, 7, 12, 16. She would then tabulate the results. If question 2 had 7 board members, that's going to be included in one of the questions.
Gotcha. I see.
If you already know you want to use those questions, you wouldn't need to go through that process. But we would highly recommend, Mr. Walker, that the board has whatever process and however you choose concluded by your January meeting, so that everybody sees the questions at your January meeting and not at the first interview.
Yes, I understand.
So you're, you know you've got that task identified.
Traditionally, you'll want to take those questions that are in the book and tweak them just slightly, just to fit your local context.
Mm-hmm.
Local,
makes sense.
Local.
Yeah.
They're fairly generic in nature, but you guys have done that. So your former questions would be a great starting point if you wanted to work on there and just tweak those. That would make a lot of sense.
What are the odds that the candidates applying will have seen this exact same list of questions that we have here today?
The candidates shouldn't. The boards all develop their own sets of questions.
So these were actually our questions from last time previously?
The 50 or 60 questions that are in the book are the 50 or 60 generic questions. If you have a set of...
I'm sorry. I thought you said we actually had those as well.
Every board gets the same 50 or 60 generic questions.
I think we have those then.
Yeah. How the boards take them and tweak them to make them their own. Every district does that on their own.
Gotcha.
And we do not know what questions you'll ask. And even if we did, we would never release that to the candidates. That is unfair practice. We would never do that.
And all that's done in executive session when you guys tweak your questions of the board. You have executive session protected.
Right. So we should have an executive session at the next meeting
to kind of hammer them out.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Walker, do you believe your board, you know, if they want to use the existing questions, maybe tweak those out?
I think we probably need to discuss it in executive session, come up with a list.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We would recommend...
What do you have a suggestion?
Well, I would suggest we do something in which we share those with everyone, whatever proposed questions we have, and then come prepared at the next meeting to refine that list. Because if you wait until next meeting, then
it's a committee.
I
thought we did receive an email with questions, didn't we?
What I was going to suggest, it would take a little bit of time to type in, but we have a tool that could be used, KIA surveys. It's what we use for KISA. I could type in the questions and it could just be a yes or no. And we could validate if you think it's a valid question based on the amount of yeses or nos. And then we could tabulate how many, and you could maybe work through at least from the ones that have the most.
I like that idea. Am I crazy though? Didn't we receive these by email?
That's what I was thinking. Did you not?
Didn't you send send
out the list?
I did send it out.
Yeah, okay, then I'm not
We did
crazy.
get some feedback, and it is included. Shannon, if you can scroll down on
yeah, I thought we saw
below
this.
that.
Okay.
I believe
That was the
there's
questions
some
we asked last
bullets.
time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's where I saw that.
Okay, we're good. So
that at least gives us a starting point as well.
it does. I think if we can review those and
Can we use the same survey thing you
plus by the next meeting, then we should be able to
Give us
decide.
an opportunity, if you have a set of questions, like, I don't understand this, I can reach out to you and ask you.
Yes.
And then we can have a lot of that done before. I just think the voting, it just seems that, I would think we'd just refine the list at the executive session.
No.
What if
Okay.
everyone
What other ideas?
suggested their questions and was all compiled, and then it was sent out, and then we just had a tally next to it, our 21 that we would want asked, and then whatever questions have the most tallies, the top 21 questions.
You would have that conversation in executive session. You wouldn't want it on emails.
No,
rallying back and forth. That's crossing the line.
Remember, we're here to protect you.
We're here to protect your interests, so you would do that.
I thought that could be like on
Sarah would
SurveyMonkey or
tally them
something.
up and say, we're going to talk, here, I've got the list compiled, we're going to go into executive session and talk about the most frequently referenced questions and tweak those to be the local flavor that you want.
Okay.
That's the work that can happen ahead of time. Is you get your questions to Sarah, she compiles the list, you go into executive session, and you start whittling it down to your final 20 questions. But don't do that over the email.
Okay, that's very good.
That's a violation.
Yeah. So it sounds something like what we need to do is review the questions, come to the meeting next January, ready to decide what the 20 questions are. We could have some communication back and forth, but so that then we need to send those to you or get them to you or whatever we do.
We would suggest Mrs. Watson where they compile
Okay, yeah.
this for you.
Well, that's what I meant.
Right. And then we would also make a recommendation to the board, and this is a discussion you can have later, is that every board member asks questions as opposed to only the president, so that everybody interacts. And then we'd also, if Mrs. Wassinger had the permission, typically the president, vice president might ask question 1 and 2, but then everybody is assigned a question. So if you have 21 questions, if you get those in advance, so Mr. O'Borney, you can see I'm asking questions 3, 12, and 18 every night. What's a good response? You can start thinking about that rather than being surprised in the interview night. Oh, I got 3, 8, and 16.
Sure.
You know in advance, so there's no surprises, and it's a smooth operation during the interview.
And that's how we did it last time. We just went around.
I think so. Yeah.
I even see the name on some question.
Yeah. Right.
If we're gonna do that though, I agree with Greg. I think we need to be a little prepared. If we're gonna pick our 21, I think we should, I hate to do this to you, Sarah, but I think we should send them to Sarah and have her compile a list of, you know, kind of what our tops are. So if 4 or 5 of us like that question, that needs to be compiled. Because otherwise, we're gonna come with 7 times 21 different opinions, and that's gonna be a long night.
Yeah, that'll save you a tremendous amount of time if you have those compiled ahead of time, but don't share the compiled list before you get into executive session.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess my approach was to look at the questions last time and probably looks good to me.
We could do that too.
But I see your point. It could be
Well, I'm okay with that.
could be a
too.
nightmare if we don't plan
I know
ahead.
there's been discussion of us picking our 21 questions, but I don't know, we mentioned sending it to Sarah, and I'm going, boy, if we all come with our whatever, and we're trying to hash that out, I just think that it's gonna be a long night.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah. Could be.
What if we just tally?
Well, the problem though is if you tally it and you don't get them until the night of, then you're cold. To me, if you exchange them as you have them, and then Sarah tallies them, whatever you want to do, but everybody gets a copy of them as they come out, that's where I think it would be.
It's a board decision on however you wish to do this. I just want to be mindful of that this is, you want to make sure you're doing this not through email, phone calls, that sort of thing.
Another strategy that's 21 is a lot of questions. Another strategy is each board member takes their top 3, because there's 7 of you. And in the end of the night, you may have to add a few setting in executive session as a board, but take your top 3 to 5 questions as you look through either last year's, or not last year's, last time's question, or the bank of questions. And then it's not as overwhelming. That's another way to do it, just so that saves everybody a little more time. And
Actually like
you'll end up with a good solid set. You'll have some overlap based on the conversation.
Yeah, I agree there. So, okay.
So take 3 to 5 of your top questions that you think are the most important to ask.
Send them to
I guarantee
Sarah.
there'll be some overlap, but then you'll just have to go into executive session and maybe tease out a few more, and you'll help move that thing along.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right, very good, thank you. That was easy. Yeah.
Can we establish, I guess, a timeline for that? If you would want to discuss that at the board meeting on January 14th, you might want to have that in by January 7th.
Okay.
So
That
it
sounds
would
good.
give you a week maybe worth of,
So January 7th, get
Lead
2 or
time.
3, 4 questions to you individually, and then, okay.
would that be doable for
Or the
everybody?
14th, no later than 5 o'clock.
4:49 or whatever. 4:59.
6:29.
Is that gonna work? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay, I think we all agree.
Very
Yeah.
good.
January 7th.
All right, thank you for that. So you've got your marching orders on questions. Want to make sure that you're mindful. I think you're aware of the key dates, but remember your potential interview dates would be January 30 through February 6, depending on that. So we can fill those up potentially, maybe not every day, but make sure, board, you're available and aware of that. The next thing, we want to make sure that you have considered your interview day. And once again, after a lot of discussion last time I was here, the board at that time decided that this would be an appropriate interview day, and there would be nothing up there that we would say would be inappropriate. So you as a board would have to decide if that was a good day. As you can see, the board is not involved until the evening, but there is activities for those candidates all throughout the day. Let's just assume you like that. You can obviously tweak it, but one of the things you have to identify during that is who's going to be the tour guide.
Okay.
Who's going to be escorting these folks from location to location. Now, you have some choices. It could be a Chamber of Commerce person. I mean, they're used to giving the tours of the community. Sometimes it's the outgoing superintendent, which works well in some districts because the candidates may have some questions to the board. You're going to give them an opportunity to ask you. They may have questions about the budget that you may say, yeah, it's pretty good. But the superintendent can say, we have no bonded interest. We're capped out on LOB, whatever that is. So could be the superintendent, but once again, the board is always right. You don't have to do that.
Okay.
But it needs to be somebody you trust, that you can send them out, listen to about the community, show them some things in the community, and get them to whatever locations you end up choosing.
So, Gary, just a quick question, I guess, looking at this, because I was thinking last time when we went through there, in fact, we were just talking here, didn't we do multiple interviews in one night? I mean, we
No,
did
one per
multiple
day.
candidates.
And we would recommend one per day.
We did with
the previous.
Dean,
That
maybe
was
on
a
the one
different-
with.
That was an interim position.
That was an interim, okay, that's what it was, okay. Okay.
Are you wanting us to select our tour guide now? Or you
No,
want
that
us
is
to-
something you need to decide soon, but we do not have to be part of that.
Yeah, typically the tour guide gets into the location and hands off to the building principal or student leaders or whoever to take them through the building.
Okay.
You had some folks in your community group today that said they would be more than happy to help with that process in any way.
Okay.
Some folks with your chamber group were excited and willing to help out any way possible with showing people around town or even helping host the meet and greet session up there that you see.
And your superintendent would not necessarily have to be the tour guide because your district, if you choose to use this, is providing time for the candidates to meet with your superintendent. So that question and answer time is taken care of within your schedule.
Okay.
So I do not need to know that. At some point soon, you need to say yay or nay or change that. But what you need to know with this schedule is the following. We really think a reception is very important for each of the candidates so the staff can meet these people. That is not an interview process. I like to call it more of a wedding reception, that somebody would introduce them and they have an opportunity with their guest to introduce themselves and talk about themselves. So everybody has an opportunity.
And obviously the guest does not sit in the interview. Interviews are all done in executive session, so if they bring a guest, that's another kind of wrinkle to think about is
what to do with that
time
guest.
when a person from the chamber or somebody from the community takes the guest and shows them around town and highlights, things that are
Gotcha.
pays.
Yeah.
You would need to, we believe that you should reserve a motel room. And when we make the calls, and I will prompt you that last night, that when you invite these candidates into your community, that you would offer a motel room for them.
Okay.
Because you do have a wealth of motels here, the free time, which is written there from 4:30 to 5:30, which is perfect, that's a great time where they could go check into their hotel, freshen up, and get ready for the next activity, which is the dinner with the candidate and their guest at that time. But at the formal interview, the guest only, the candidate only. That would be
That would be
different.
a wrinkle, yeah.
That would be definitely different.
So get a whole different set of answers that way.
Yeah, but we would like to caution you that the dinner is a special board meeting and the interview is a special board meeting.
Oh,
So
right,
dinner,
right, right.
because you have 7 board members, that is also an executive session. So you'll have to decide, do you want to have a caterer? Are you going to go to a restaurant? And if you go to a restaurant, is there a location that can be private so the patrons are not listening to the conversation? The dinner, although it's not really a peppering of question and answers, this is their opportunity to say, we have children, I'm married, here's my husband, here's what they do, those types of things. You really learn a lot about somebody when you break bread with them.
What effect, the only thing that, it's a lengthy day and it drags it out and I understand what your rationale is, but why start an interview at 5:30, then go to dinner and then pick it back up? It seems to me you'd be better off eating at 5:30 and then interviewing after.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm not saying this is bad, but 5:30 could be your dinner.
Okay.
So you go into executive session.
Right.
That may go to 6:15. You recess for 15 minutes, let everybody freshen up, and then resume your executive session at 6:30 minus the guest.
Okay.
And that's when you'd start in on your 20 questions.
Absolutely.
20 questions, all right.
You don't want to start the 20 questions with the guest there because
They'll mess it up.
Could be awkward, yeah. Okay.
It's awkward. But then during your formal interview, what will you do with the guest? So depending on where you have that, the guests, you could have a nice place where they could hang out, restroom, television, somewhere to lounge. They could go back to the motel, which means possibly somebody may have to take them because the car may stay with the candidate. Just things to think about. Or you could provide a 2 hours, hour and a half tour with your chamber person on to the spouse at that point.
Sure.
There's there's no right or wrong on that. It's what you're comfortable with. But you do need, what are they going to do for that last, where are they going to go?
Okay.
And how are you going to get them there?
Right. Sounds pretty good.
We would recommend, let's just make an assumption, you'll have 4 interviews. We have no guarantee of that. We would highly recommend that you do not talk about the candidates until after the last interview. So, and the reason we're asking that, first of all, you have nobody to compare them with. Mr. Walker, if you happen to, after the after that first interview and you go, well, I know Gary said not to talk about them, but man, if they're all that good, we're in good shape. And Mr. O'Borney's thinking, oh my gosh, I thought that was the worst interview in the world. So all of a sudden you're worried. Oh my gosh, this is going to be hard. So we would highly recommend that you stick around, and that's a long last night. And you decide who your top candidate. We'll talk through this at the next time you see me on the 28th.
No problem. All right.
All right.
Makes sense.
I want to remind, and Mrs. Wasker is well aware of this, but they are special board meetings.
Yes.
So you need to notice the public, so make sure that there's no coma violations or a waiver of notice, so make sure you're aware of that.
What, you said that the next time we see you on the 28th?
Mm-hmm. Which is the screening days, when we will make our recommendation.
January.
Yes. Whew, I bet you that did sound weird. I bet you that did make you nervous.
Yeah, right.
The last thing I would like to review with you, I believe it's in your electronic packet, but just in case it's not, on the inside cover of your manual, there's a salary comparison sheet in there. We only will give you this information. It's how you handle this information is up to you. But I want to make sure you see it and understand what you're seeing here. As you can see, there's many columns, so I want to make sure you understand those columns. Column A is the USD number. Column B is the USD name or the district name. C is the enrollment. That seems to be an important thing to board members so they can see how your enrollment compares to, or excuse me, your salary compares to similar enrollment sizes.
Okay.
The next column is the year. So if it says 1819, obviously that's pretty up-to-date information. You may see some that it's not that year, so be slightly behind, but that's the latest information. Column E is the base salary. So that is the base salary only. Column F is the benefit package, the yearly benefit package. So column G is the base salary and the total benefit total.
Okay.
Column G is what we're doing all of our comparisons. So when you look through these lists, they are being compared through column G, which includes the benefit. These will not be as pertinent to you, but H is the region of KASB. I will be important to you. That's the KSHA class. So 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A.
Okay.
J is the interim. If it's an interim superintendent, you'll see a true in that. The next is K. If that particular superintendent is retired, Caper's retired, you'll see a true in that regard. Not here, you won't see this too often, but principal duties is L. M is the number of years that person has been the superintendent in that district.
Okay.
N is the number of years they've been a superintendent total in all districts. And then of course the contract length, so you'll either see a 1, 2, or 3. By law, you can never give more than a 3-year contract. So that simply means that that particular superintendent has a 2-year contract, a 1-year contract, or a 3-year.
How does that doesn't have a 10?
Yeah. Is that a typo or is that a?
Well, it is a typo, because I saw one the other day, but that's the information that was put in our database.
Wow, 10-year contract.
So that superintendent's feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that person. She's retired. What the heck's going on with her? She got a 10-year contract. Yeah. 3 years is the longest a school district can do, give a contract to a superintendent. So you need to be aware of that. So the 15 higher, 15 lower, based on column G, the 15 districts that are stacked above Hayes on this sheet are the 15 districts that are directly lower of their total package. The 15 below are the ones that are directly higher. Then down below we have your Western Athletic Conference, so you can see how you compare with those school districts, and you can look at that comparison. I want you to be mindful of, you know, some of you have some very, very large schools within that district, so you'll have to make your own judgments on that. The second page is all of the 4A schools, because at least the last I knew you were classed as a 4A. It may have changed unbeknownst to me, but you were listed as a 4A school district. So there's 64, so you can see you match up pretty well there. But I think a lot of superintendents identify you as a 6A, or excuse me, a 5A district. So I also included the 5A on the next page. Now, you're not in that obviously because you're not listed as 5A, but I wanted you to see that for your own information.
Okay.
So board, what you need to do at some point between now and interview time, and please do not wait till interview time so that you'll make a great decision, is that you as a board need to decide a range of salaries that you would be comfortable with paying your superintendent.
Okay.
We will also provide to you the candidate's current salary. So when you see us on January 28th, we'll say, here are the candidates that we're going to recommend to you. This person is currently making this. You will know that, which will help you making the decisions on what you may offer that person.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Jordan, anything you can think of?
No, on the salaries, this is great information to start looking over, but you really will have some deep conversations after you get through the interview process and decide what we need to offer to get the person that we want. We always tell boards to, the people that are applying for your job, they go out and get this information. It's on the State Department's website. So they know what you're paying, they know what other districts comparable in size are paying.
Right.
Sometimes we work with boards that think, oh man, I can save $20,000 because this person's making this. And so just be cautious of that.
Okay.
Obviously, if they don't have the experience that warrants what you're currently paying, you're not going to pay them that, but you still need to be within that range. Otherwise, it could make the negotiation process fall apart.
Right.
We don't do your negotiations for you, but we are there as a support. So when you get into that process, we're looking at hiring this person. Does this sound like a reasonable salary for that person with that experience? And we can kind of tell you that. Or we often get, well, we don't want to go up anymore with the salary, but is there something like, do we need to throw in moving expenses or something like that as a slight incentive to get that? Those are kind of questions I typically get those on the last night at 10 o'clock after you've been 12 interviews. But,
so your personal cell phone number is on here, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're going to get a cell phone number.
Yeah, good.
I gave you my card, it's in the inside. So.
Okay.
So yeah, those are ways that we can help you as you get to that point where you're trying to figure out the salary.
I would plug your guys' website, because there's a data mining where all that's at, and there's a lot more than what you provided us on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you want the password protected portion.
Yeah, I believe you're a member. I mean, you are a member, so somebody in your district has that password to get.
Okay.
Sir, I'm sure has the password.
Very good. Very good.
That's all we have formally for you. Remember, our job is to make your job as easy as possible. So feel free to call. Sarah and I are in constant contact, and as you well know, she does a great job on your behalf, so thank you for that.
We have one question that popped in my head that's kind of a probably silly logistical type question, but since the dinner and the interview are executive session meetings, mechanically, how do you do that? Do you meet at the restaurant, call the place, the meeting, and then say?
Several options. You could have the dinner right here. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
A lot of times it's a catered thing. It might be a little buffet, or somebody plates it for you.
No, you're right.
Let's say at 6:15 you're concluded. Everybody they clean up. You got 15 minutes. You come back in here for the interview, and everything's cleaned up and you're ready to go. Now we would suggest you might reconfigure.
Last time we did the dinner
You're right.
here, and then
You said that
to the
earlier.
master teacher conference room to do the interviews.
Okay, that works.
Tighter setting.
That's
Yeah,
what
this
was over there, so everybody was close.
Although maybe that would be beneficial. Put the spotlight on them.
Yeah, you put the spotlight on us.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha. All right.
Call if you need it.
We will work hard and then get.
Paul, you got a question?
Yeah, is anybody inquiring about this position?
Yes, absolutely. They are inquiring. I know we work for you, and we'd like to be a little more specific, but right now we'll be not very specific, because if we said you had no applications, that may get out, it's a public session, and somebody would go,
Oh my God.
hey, I'm not applying. If I said, hey, hallelujah, you got 20, somebody's going to say, I don't have a chance, I'm not going to apply, and maybe your best candidate.
Okay.
So you will know everybody that's applied, but we like to hold off until we get.
No, that's fine.
So you'll provide us.
It's good you said.
Everybody. The applications belong to you.
Okay.
We're going to slide those to you at some point, and they're going to be yours.
All right.
Okay.
We will be in touch.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Have a safe trip back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a late night drive. All right, let's move ahead here. The next item on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests. Any more discussion or agenda requests?
I do that one.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw it out there, it ties to what we just talked about, but my suggestion, just to throw it out there so people can think about it before the next meeting, but I would think that our tour guide might be Chris and Shanna, and then our,
Oh, okay.
for the,
We want somebody that's gonna wow them. We don't
would be
want
like, we'd reach out to Tammy Walbrock and
Mhm.
see.
I was thinking the same
My
thing.
understanding, she indicated already she would do it, and
Okay.
so.
All right, good idea.
I'm cool.
All right.
Did you do?
Actually, Sarah did it last time. I know I was looking at the schedule, and I thought it would be nice if we had some time with the person like Cindy, so that would give us.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for discussion, or?
Well,
We
did
could-
dates, Sarah, figured out?
From
We
that up-
only have
we-
one date
we
to
only
work
have-
for everybody.
Yeah, which is actually kind of
Actually,
confusing.
Lance changed his availability.
I had one
So
date
there's
that
one.
opened
Oh, that discussion.
There were 6 of the 7 who could attend on the other 2 days. They were Wednesdays.
I just don't know how you do an interview and have a discussion about, if you missed one, how do you have a meaningful discussion if you only attended partial? I mean, I would assume we're gonna have 3 or 4 interviews, so I think if that week doesn't work, maybe I don't know, there was some day, like Luke, Wednesdays didn't appear to work for you. Is that every Wednesday or just those 2?
My wife and I teach religion classes that night, so, but I mean, obviously, if it's something, if I'm the only one on those Wednesdays, let me know and we'll look at making some changes. Either,
I thought we had one that
she
worked
can
out.
do it alone, or we can look at seeing, find a substitute or something.
Would your intent be to have more than 3 days, I guess? Because as of now, we really only have 3 true days that we're even close to working for everybody. So if you would want a 4th candidate, I would need to do another.
Just because, and then we can, and maybe you send that back out with that, because Lance just told me he thought that we only needed 1, and so that's, I think we should shoot for 4.
Yeah.
I can see if I can move some other stuff around too.
Okay, I'll go ahead and keep the same days.
Like
And
Now
then
they-
28th, and then that following week, is 4, you're gonna need to look at a 2-week span.
Yeah, but I hope you keep them tight.
Early the
Because
next week,
you
yeah.
start forgetting the first one.
But if we
Within a
have
week.
a board meeting Monday, you can't have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I wouldn't think that's gonna work. You're gonna have to spill into that next week a little.
Thursday, Tuesday, something, okay. So do you want to send that out again, Sarah, or?
I will do that first thing tomorrow.
Sounds good. All righty. Do we need to have an executive session tonight?
I think so.
John left, so I guess we don't. I assume, I hear we don't need an executive session? Okay. Anything else? All right. I will call the meeting to adjournment.